Welcome to Raging Bullets, a DC Comics fan podcast, episode 519. Welcome to Raging Bullets. I'm Sean Wayland, drnorge, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Jim, the sensei of the whatnot Segulin, and the Duke of You-Know.
How's it going, eh?
Jim, on this episode, we are joined by Brian Lau of Staunch Ambition. We're going to talk about his Kickstarter, where we get to promote issue number 3. The nice part is during this discussion, we get about 40 minutes into that discussion, we get very spoilery on issue number 2. So the nice part is there's a 40-minute discussion you can listen to that is lightly talks about, the universe, gives you a background into Kickstarter, what it's like as a creator to do a Kickstarter, and then we let you know about 40 minutes in as we start to get really spoilery about issue 2. So if you haven't read the series, you can join us for that discussion ahead of time. I just wanted to put that as a disclaimer. Jim and I also do an in-depth discussion about Nightwing, number 41. We do an in-depth discussion about Milk Wars. And then we do some speeding bullets that you can take a look at the show notes to see some of the numerous books that we discussed during our speeding bullets segments. We are proud members of the Comics Podcast Network, the League of Comic Book Podcasts, and the InfiniteComics.com podcast partnership. Sponsoring this episode, Jim, is DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. What is going on at DCBService.com?
Well, we always have the bundles, and it's great support for everybody. If you're check them out, 50% off the various bundles. But DCBS also has this really cool deal right now on DC Nation number 0. It's regularly a quarter, and 50% off. It's only 12 cents, but it's it's multiple stories from some top-notch creators, and this is kind of looking like it's going to be some of the previews and what's upcoming in the DC Nation. Some stuff spinning off of metal. We've got Joker reacting to Batman and Catwoman's pending nuptials. So it looks like this is going to be a really neat story. Definitely pick this book up.
Jim, now let me ask you a question, because you and I are both on a tight budget. When a book is cut in half and 12 cents, does that influence your buying decision? Because I know you were probably on the fence before on the 25-cent book. So, like, when you have that opportunity, you're like, I don't know, it's a quarter, and, the price of gum nowadays is going up.
I'm buying 2. They give me 50% off. I'm going to buy 2.
Would you buy one for a friend?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Not you, but a friend.
Over at InStockTrades.com, they have, I love these omnibuses. I'm a huge fan. They've got the hardcover Green Lantern, the Silver Age Omnibus, Volume 2, 50% off, only $62.50. They also have the trade paperback of the Hawk and Dove Silver Age, 50% off, only $12.49. I haven't read, because this was with the male Dove, I haven't read much Hawk and Dove from the Silver Age at all. I'm very anxious in that one, just because at less than $13, I'm going to grab that. I don't have that. And in an omnibus format, it's like, oh, great, I can kind of read and enjoy the whole thing. And I'm interested in that because I like Hawk and Dove as a concept. This is stuff I have not read at all. The Green Lantern one has me, just because it's Green Lantern, and to have a full Silver Age collection of that, and I appreciate that that's being put in hardcover. I wonder what's making them make the decision which goes into hardcover and which goes into trade. The Hawk and Dove one's a good one in trade, because at that price point, I'm in. And it's color. This is where these are winning out. I collected those showcase volumes, those black and white ones, but I am finding that my preference is these omnibuses that they're releasing, because whether they're hardcover or trade paperback, they're all color. And I'm really liking seeing these books in full color. That makes a big difference for me. Are you buying much of these, or are you picking and choosing? How are you approaching these?
I'm picking and choosing on them. It's again, you get some great deals, so it's one of those I can't pass up that good of a deal. So I'm like, oh, okay, I got to go with it. But with some of the Silver Age and the Bronze Age and some of the those, I'll look and see, and I don't know. It depends on how I'm feeling on that day, whether I want to go that route or not. Certain books, super books, I'm jumping on them without hesitation.
Well, I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. Want to remind everybody that they are a digital partner, and you go to DCBService.com, whether it's Comixology or My Digital Comics, you want to link those accounts to your DCB Service account and shop through their portal. 5% of those purchases become a part of a discount off of your DCB Service order. So thank you to DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. I do want to remind everyone that we're going to be sharing information during this episode about the Kickstarter for Staunch Ambition issue number 3. So please consider picking that book up. We're big fans, and why don't we jump into telling you why? Mr. Segulin, what kind of a podcast are we?
Raging Bullets is a spoiler podcast. We go in-depth into plotline, story twists, and whatnot of the comics we're discussing on today's show. So, if you're ever in the books, you may want to come back later so you can better enjoy the show.
Let's talk to Brian Lau.
Green Lantern, let you and I destroy that space junk.
Joining us once again is creator Brian Lau, as we're going to be discussing the Staunch Ambition issue 3 Kickstarter, but we're also going to be talking really spoilery about issue 2. And this is a follow-up from episode 491, where we talked about issues 0 and 1. So for those of you that joined us for that, it's great to have this follow-up. But if you haven't listened to that, you may want to jump and listen to that episode, actually, to get brought up to speed on Staunch Ambition. But Brian, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you back to promote issue 3. I'm really excited for this.
Yes, I am excited too. I mean, one of the cool things that turned me on to you guys was you guys interview Freddie Williams often, and it was awesome to work with Freddie Williams on my issue 1. He did the cover, so he was one of the first big names and exciting things I had for when I started to do this book. So
what's it like now? Is it easier to do a Kickstarter now that you've done multiple before? Or is it harder to get it? How does this work out for you in your process? Because I don't know. The creative side for me is I'm your consumer. I'm the one that you want to get your art form to. So what is this like now to get the wheels churning again for another Kickstarter? Does it become easier as it goes along? What does that look like for you?
I think there's a lot of aspects that do become easier. I mean, you start to grow a fan base, and you start to get, the first Kickstarter. There's so much overhead, and I don't know, it still seems like there's a lot of overhead to, as far as researching. So like every aspect of what, if I should do Kickstarter, if I should do Indiegogo, if I should just go door to door, or get a hat out on the street and look pitiful. No, I'm kidding. So it's like, so you do the research, and then it looks like Kickstarter. So then you got to research, what is entails a good successful Kickstarter. What should I do? And so a lot of that is behind me. Some of it you revisit because it's been a while, and you're like, okay, what was the details again? I feel like I'm overlooking. You make notes. So you have a fan base. You have a template and research, and so that's easier. I think there's a appeal, as we all know in the comic industry, to an issue 1 that is unique. As we know, the comics continue to redo series, so they can do the issue 1 marketing spiel. But so that was I think one good thing about the first time around. But everything you learn mistakes, you find new things, so it does get a little easier. So in certain respects.
One of the things you talk about fan base, and one of the things I appreciate about you is I follow you on social media. And you're really good about posting pictures of meetings with fans and things like that, and people holding up the book. And I think there's something to that. You're building a community around your work, and it takes extra time to do that. But I love how, working conventions is hard. We had the opportunity as a podcast to do, and this is nothing like doing it as a comic creator, so I'm not trying to link that. But we got a small glimpse when we used to do like conventions as a podcast, especially like New York Comic Con and stuff like that, to what the amount of work that goes into what you guys do to promote. So I'm not making it equal, but I just have a glimpse into that. So I know, like, especially by the time you get to the end of a convention, it's hard to keep that energy and momentum up. But you really do a nice job, I think, of just making it fun. And I really enjoy through social media being able to follow, like, wow, he's really, like, going out of his way to build a fan community. And I think there's something to that nowadays. I don't think growing up when we were comic fans, a lot of it was in isolation. If you were lucky enough to have a local comic shop, you could have some comic shop discussions, but you didn't have that opportunity to really feel like you're part of a community around creators, around work that you like, where there was like a consistent opportunity to connect in between issues. We have that now, and I think you utilize it really well, and I just wanted to comment about that because I'm enjoying it as a fan, just seeing all the fresh faces of people that are excited to have the book, and your excitement and being able to get pictures of people who are posing with your book and all that. I think it's just nice nowadays to see that it's new. It's something different that has just happened in recent years, and I know it's extra work to do that, but it's appreciated.
Wow, you sure, you just hit me with that perspective of, being younger and how much different it is now. I mean, yeah, comics were interesting to geeks and you didn't brag about it, or it wasn't the cool thing. I mean, now comics are like the rock stars in certain ways. There's a lot of at least rock stars within the comic industry, yes. And they're cool as in a social norm. So what a difference. But yeah, I do have fun. I mean, I go to the cons and I'm energetic, and I for the life of me, I never would have foreseen myself being a salesman of any sort. Like, so all the jobs I had just to make ends meet while going to college and all that, I was not a salesman. I hated it with a passion. So, but this is like, so I have to sell my book, and it's not the same as going to a car lot that you don't own the vehicles and you didn't design them, and they're not your vision, and you're selling them to people that might need them too. So that's fine. But yes, I go there with enthusiasm because I believe in the book, and I couldn't be prouder of the book. I mean, so like I'm going to be technically 4 issues. I have a preview issue and then issues 1 through 3, and I'm starting to look at it now, and I'm like, where we've come and what we've done. It's been a lot of hard work, but it's like, with my team and everything we've been able to accomplish, I couldn't be prouder of what we've put out there. So I can go to these cons and be just excited and whatnot, and it's grueling. It's hard because you might not get, certain cons just don't go as good, or like I did a con that was a great con, but it was so diverse with pop culture that there was a ton of people there that weren't into comics. So it was just a hard sell to this crowd of people who were there for music or wrestlers and stuff. But so you got to fight through all that. But I do believe in it, and I couldn't be prouder of what we got. So,
what are some of the best type of cons? Because that's interesting to me. Because nowadays, as a fan, I'm seeing more and more cons happening now, which is interesting to me. Are there cons that are better for indie books? I mean, I say that out of pure ignorance because when I go to a convention, I'm a comic fan. So if there's comics there, it's a magnet for me. I'm naturally drawn to that area. But you're right that there's a lot of cons nowadays that are almost segmented, where there's sections set up for very different groups of fans so what is the some of the better cons? Were there ones that surprised you and how good they were?
Well, that's the thing. It's like it's hard to know. So, like, I'm a little leery of certain pop culture ones if they're going to be that diverse. So, and now that I have more content out, I tend to do better at all the cons, because I was out there with a preview issue in the beginning, like, I mean, it's like, yeah, I got something, but when you have, 3 issues on the table and all kinds of prints, then that's like, it's something a little more compelling. But it's a tough one to figure out which cons are going to be the best or not. It's like the big giant cons can be so much fun, and it's so excitement, and they draw big crowds because they have the big actors, and then they have a huge comic book pull and cosplay and all that. But then, at the same time, you got like a million different things. Someone like you comes in, and it's like, okay, I can't buy everything here. So, it's like, it's kind of like sometimes the smaller cons are better because it's more intimate and personal, and you might get a real dedicated fan. And then the bigger cons, you might grab 10 more fans, but they might not be as dedicated. It's not as intimate. So It depends. It's hard to know though. You just kind of try them out and see what works.
Yeah, it's amazing to me nowadays just how many cons are out there, because it used to be hard to find ones local. Now there's a ton of them. I mean, it's within driving distance. It's literally almost one a month that, and I'm talking about driving distance for me, not significant travel. If you get to significant travel,
is that a good thing or a bad thing? So I was kind of on the fence because I'm like, it's a little bit of both, but I wonder if it's good or bad, more one way or the other.
I think the trick is, I mean, for me, it's I attend a sampling of them, and I find the ones that, and it's obviously my reasoning is different than yours. But I try to find a sampling of them that I attend, so that way I kind of see in the future which ones really had more of the things that I'm looking for. For me, it's the comic piece, and your point about the intimacy, I think, is pretty critical. I tend to like the cons where I have an opportunity, especially when I'm going to an artist alley, where I have a chance to find out about indie books, where I can spend some time. It's kind of a double-edged sword. You want to see traffic going through there, and significant traffic, so that way there's, to your point, more of a chance for creators to pitch their materials. But I also like those conversations, because sometimes that's the difference between me picking up a book and not, because everybody's on tight budgets. I mean, we've all got, limited dollars when you walk in.
Yeah.
But I always walk in with a certain amount of money. Like, I want to try new things. And that time where you can spend talking to a creator and really getting your head around a book, especially to your point, when there's content, when there's a couple of issues sitting there, and I have an opportunity for them to not only pitch me, but to know that I can actually read what we're talking about. That part is very exciting for me. So it's an interesting time. I'm glad that there's more options out there. So I think it's a good thing in the sense that there's more opportunity than I think there's ever been before. But I think it's also challenging to know which ones are the right opportunities.
Yeah, it's tough. It's like the movies. There's a bit of oversaturation with everything, not just comics, but just music and movies and comics and I don't like. I hear a lot of people as they get older, it's like, oh, stuff, music is just there's not good music out there like there used to be. And I'm like, no, the problem isn't there's not great music, genius, brilliant music, or comics or movies. There's a ton of them, and it's hard, there's a lot of crap, or there's a lot of stuff that's mediocre. And then there's those gems, man, and there's a lot of them, so you have to sift through it all. So, so I try to look at both sides. I love a good debate on things, and I think the truth is always somewhere in the middle. But I've been enjoying, like, I do things fun at the con. Like, sometimes I'll do a mind reading challenge, because my book deals with entering the thought dimension, and then I wear superhero socks, and I my stepfather left me and my brother and I a bunch of pool cues, and I'm like, what am I going to do with these? We're going to try to sell them on eBay, and that's just hard to do and to find a time. So, I've been taking a couple here and there, and I just do like a game. Anyone who buys my books, and then I give them clues, and if they can guess the superhero on my socks, they can win the pool cue. Or I've had other things like Christmas ornaments of Darth Vader's helmet or some cool stuff. And so, posting pictures about that is fun as well. You might have seen some of that. So, yeah, I go to the con and you try to do stuff to where it's just like it's a memory, That's another great part of the cons is like, I'd like to see you guys at one of these cons someday down the road. But seeing people like you that I've podcasted with or that other creators, that's one of my favorite cons, like Motor City Comic Con. Is just a family reunion of creators and people that cool. You grind in the business with, so that's another fun part of the cons.
That is the community aspect of comics now. I think that's what we started with. I think is something that I'm really enjoying now, because it's much more of a social thing. And I'm like, when I was a kid, It was just the opposite. It was like you were like some kind of goofy kid if you were talking about this kind of stuff. Nowadays, it's there's all kinds of people to chat with, which I love. I actually think community is probably one of the strongest things coming out of comics now, and I think it helps when we're talking about projects like this. Speaking of community, Kickstarter is a community type of thing, and one of the things I really love about Kickstarter is when you follow people, you find out about projects that they're following. And Staunch Ambition is certainly one of those projects that I think there's a community around it now. So tell us a little bit about the issue 3 Kickstarter. It just kicked off. When does it go until?
It's going until April the 19th, so which is, I think, a Thursday. And we're about 5.5 days in. So we're about 22% funded. So, it's a good start. All Kickstarters tend to slow down even in the middle, like even a giant Kickstarter like Dirk Manning, who's, like broke some records. I mean, if you look at it, it just trickles around the middle. So it's good to be on like your show and to try to get the word out there during the middle, because the stress level of waiting till the another boost in the end it's not a joyride, but it's just part of the game. It's part of the psychological thrill of marketing a book on Kickstarter. That's why Kickstarter is a king, because it's all or nothing. So I've done 2 Kickstarters. They've been successful, and that's how I've been able to produce this book. It's an independent book, so it's the only way I could do it. And I could. You want me to tell you some stuff about the specific issue 3?
Yeah, let's please.
I'll tell you. One of the things I've been writing is the stars have aligned for this issue 3 in a way that I didn't even plan out. Like a lot of the stuff with the first several issues is I planned a lot of stuff out, and there was a few things that came together for issue 3 that just kind of happened. So one of them was I had 2 songs, a rock and an electronic instrumental song for issues since issue 1, I think. I just love the concept of having music with the book, and I have written some melodies. I always dreamed of taking my melodies and giving them to actual musicians to produce. So we did that for 2 songs. And then now I have 2 new songs, brand new, for issue 3, Industrial Tech, composed by Silver Meow and myself. Silver Meow did most of the work, but I did help, and we worked together to make sure they're the best they can be. So I'm using one of them in the trailer on Kickstarter, and it fits perfect. Even the template I had and all the I actually built my trailer and the visuals and everything first, and I was going to use one of the other songs, a different part of the song that I had used previously. And then when this thing came about with the 2 new music, it's kind of like movie scores more, industrial techno, like a movie score. And when you hear them, you'll really recognize it. Maybe you can play them in the podcast or whatever. But when I laid it in there, like if you watch the trailer on the Kickstarter, it just lines up perfectly. And I didn't even have to arrange all that. You like imagine when you see it, especially toward the end where it goes into this dramatic. My title, and then it goes into my tagline, and then it goes back to my title, and the music does that exactly. It was like fate, I guess you could say. Yeah. So I'm excited about the 2 new songs, and then I got a dream come true. When I first started to look into I was actually going to do this book. I went to Comics and More over here in Michigan. And I asked Chris Brown, the owner, what's some good independent sci-fi books? And we were looking around, and we went over to Valent, and there's a book called Rye. Oh, yeah. And Clayton Crane is the artist, does the cover art and the interiors. And I just fell in love with that. I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is insane. And so I picked those up, and I was studying those, reading them, looking at his panel layouts, and I didn't even consider trying to touch his art style. But I was going to be doing a convention in Monroe, and he's going to be there. And so months I knew ahead of time that he's going to be there, and I'm just like over and over in my head playing the scenario of me asking him to do my cover like a kid, and I finally got there, and I asked him, and he said, yeah. So we got Clayton Crane's cover that I've been posting online, as you can see. So that was another thing that was a dream come true and just lined up perfectly. So, and then, well go ahead. I don't want to keep going.
No. This is great.
No, I was just going to comment on, because I'm looking at the Kickstarter page right now, and I have the that Clayton Crane cover up, and I'm looking at this thing going, damn, that looks good.
Oh my gosh. It's this is always my concern, because they don't do the covers for free. It's not like you know having the dream come true is that easy, because you still got to pay them, and then getting them to get the stuff done is hard too. But I had a long time to, it wasn't like there was a crucial deadline, so that worked out fine. But the thing that really worries me is like, I finally got my favorite artist to do my cover. Well, even the greatest artists, not every cover they do has that. Like, it's great, but there's certain covers that are just like that magical cover, right? That you don't get tired of looking at, even with your favorite artist. And I was like, okay, I hope that this is something that's going to be like extra special and just like, that is engaging every time you look at it. And that's what I think he did. I couldn't be happier with, because he does a lot of work. So I'm not sure you can have that magic every time, but this cover is insane. And then I put together an animated GIF. I don't know if you noticed that on the Kickstarter, because I just wanted to have that little extra flair. What is it? How much flair are you supposed to have according to, what is it? 15 is the minimum?
Well, you can never have too much flair.
Yeah, my name is Brian, too. I think that was the manager's name in the movie. But I saw Plume, I think, is another Kickstarter and independent book. And I went to the Kickstarter before I loaded mine up, and she had this animated, just subtle animation. And I'm like, I want that from my Kickstarter, So.
Yeah, this looks, and the animated you're talking about, going from the pencils to like the finished product. That does look really cool. That's a nice transition. So yeah, this and you get some really cool options here too.
Well, there's an animated GIF for the Clayton cover too, because that's an animated GIF on an interior page, which I'll have to get to my creative team doing the interiors. But did you notice the animated GIF of the Clayton cover is also there?
I'm awesome. Looking for it right now. Wait, hold on.
It's the top first time you see it. So,
and it's one of the nice things I like that you do in your Kickstarters is some of my favorite things. Every Kickstarter is there's a crowd that it's their first Kickstarter with the particular book. So you always put options in there to be able to get the whole series leading up to it, which is nice because it makes it nice to be able to support something and go that you can. But then you also have a lot of other swag that goes along with it. And I'm a big fan of that. Comics, you can never have too much swag with comics. I love the extras. My office here where I'm recording right now is loaded with comic book swag. My workout room in my basement is loaded with comic book swag. And I don't know, it's part of, my upbringing's always been comics. It's been revolved around this. I love the art form. And when it's infectious when I hear you talk about your work and the people that you're getting the opportunity to work with. And, just when you're talking about the cover, like, I want this cover to be something special. And this is, Rye is a book that I'm reading. I love Rye. So when you had made mention that you got him as the artist, I was geeking out because I'm like,
no doubt.
I'm already a big fan of Staunch Ambition, and like to have him doing the cover of it, I'm like, this is so cool.
I told you ahead of time, I think through IM messaging.
Yeah, and I was like, this is so sweet because that's such a beautiful book, and honestly, I think the art style, you're right, is so because Rye is such a great sci-fi fantasy adventure. It's great.
He knows how to do. I mean, he knows how to show action, and he knows how to do panel layouts, man.
You can't help but look at that book and notice visually.
Yeah.
I mean, just immediately and get drawn into it, which is really great. So I'm excited for you for that, and I'm excited for this Kickstarter for that because I think it's very cool.
Thanks, yeah. And Jim, I think you were saying something about the interior page. I have an animated GIF showing the pencils from Erwin Arosa.
Yeah.
Who he also works on another book called Grenadon, and it's like Game of Thrones, or kind of like the medieval times, and so it's all black and white. His pencils are magnificent, and so I have Erwin Arosa does the pencils, and then Neil Anderson comes in and does the colors for the interior pages, and you can see. I'll be sharing maybe a couple more. I like to share a little. I don't like those trailers that give away too much, but you got to give some of it up. So I got the cover out there now. Boy, it was hard not to share that cover when I got it before long before this Kickstarter. So.
Well, that's something I've appreciated really with throughout this series is the artistic choices you're doing with this, because this really does have a solid just artistic feel to it. It's not just it's not just like your classic comic book look, which I traditionally enjoy the most, but it does have that styling that's fitting this future that we're laying out here. And this is a sci-fi in the future, so your art style kind of is meshing and kind of going along with that jive. We got a really cool relationship between your written word and your created, as well as the art story being told. Man, I'm really digging this and looking forward to 3.
Thank you. Oh, 3 is fun. Oh man, I had fun. I get a little bit into the backstory of the characters. I've got some, I think, just really fun action in it and stuff. So it's got some magnificent pages, as you can see some. I don't know how many put on a Kickstarter, but I at least put that one major page. So then I got a nice double page spread. This was cool. I got one of my, so I have, some cool rewards. We were talking about that with Kickstarters is to become a character. My last Kickstarter, Caleb purchased that. And so now Caleb, as you can see in this Kickstarter, I show like cropped in versions of his face. I don't give away what's going on with him, but it doesn't look too pleasant. But he paid to have this done. So he sent me his mug, perfect mug for a character, and I put him in there. I also have 2 of those rewards for this next Kickstarter for issue 4. Your face and you can be in a character in issue 4. Well, they're already sold. Like, I guess those just went right away because Caleb set the precedent for this, and people see the expression on Caleb's face, and they must have been like, I want that, So that's going to be fun to, and Caleb's character is exciting because I'm like, I wonder if I should bring him back later as a reoccurring character. Well, it's on my radar because it would be very interesting to see what he would come back and how crucial he could be.
That's fun though, because that's another part of the community aspect of it. To be a supporter and to wind up in the book, and I like that those things are limited too, because you don't want to overdo that because then it tends to take away from the original story. But when you do it judiciously like this, it becomes a fun thing. It's a cameo. It's really it's.
Stan Lee's started.
Yeah, exactly. But how cool is that? And to know that those are pieces, I'm excited to see that, and those are fun parts. I'm looking actually through, as we're chatting right now, through issue 2, and because you were talking about the artwork of the interiors, and just got me thinking about the artwork in issue 2. Actually, the whole series, the artwork's phenomenal. But I'm just looking at the first page and looking at the corridors and the sense of scale.
Issue 2?
Yes. The sense of scale is something that I really appreciate in the artwork. You feel like they're on the station and it just feels vast. And there is a sense of large spaces. I grew up being a huge sci-fi fan, and I obviously love Star Trek and Star Wars, but all sci-fi, Babylon 5, things like that are just shows that Deep Space Nine, I geeked out over all that kind of stuff. I was like a sponge. So when we get to see comics that, one of the advantages that comics have is you don't have to deal with the big screen budget of, and limitations. I think nowadays we're luckier with CGI and things like that they're able to realize scale on in a way that we weren't able to. But they used to use some great trickery back in the day to make us feel like things were larger than they were. And artists do the same thing in comics, where they make you feel like there's this sense of distance and this sense of large spaces, and you like your motion and feel like you're traveling and you're actually walking through. And it's one of the things that I really appreciate, because at the start of issue 2, there's a lot going down because we were left with quite a cliffhanger, and things are moving very, very fast. And you need that sense of speed, not just in the dialogue and the events that are happening, but in the movement of characters. And one of the biggest compliments I can give you is this issue kicked off with a sense of motion. That
okay. For issue 2, that's how you got it?
Yeah. So I mean, and when I mean a sense of motion, not necessarily everybody's running around. I don't mean it that way. It's a sense that there's a lot happening, a lot moving, because there's a crisis happening that they've gone through. We've had Nimrod who just went boom, and we're at this point saying, well, there was some illusion to what potentially was happening with him because his clone was sitting there, but we hadn't seen that payoff yet, and we hadn't actually seen all of the details of his plans. And in the midst of all that, a crisis has been generated on this station that has left a lot of people in motion. And I really love that sense in the opening page of what just happened. Let's analyze this. And while that's happening, you've got people who are moving around, getting things done, including Azra. As I always pronounce his name wrong. Azarus?
Yep.
Okay, good. And I think, you know what it is? I think I'm still stuck.
Trust your instincts, young Jedi.
You know, I'm so guilty of, as a kid, I got names in my head, and I never let them go, including creators' names. Probably my worst thing was creators' names. I butchered their last names, and then I just couldn't let it go. But
I'm awful with pronunciations. So.
Especially when I'd see them in film. Now that all of, our comic creations are eventually coming to TV and film and all that, you hear like, I have been calling that character by the wrong name for about 20 years now.
Man, I do that with like common words. So yes, trust me, man. I know. I was raised, that way. So, no. So you're saying you got it. I could tell you had it, but Azarus is on his aspect of this, crucial. All the stuff that's happening, right? So, and
is he becoming more self-aware, more sentient? Is that? Are we just seeing that come to the forefront now, or meaning that was something that was always in him, or is he, as time's going on, growing more? Because one of the things I noticed in issue 2 that I really liked, we saw this character who was. I think there was a perception because of the way he was being treated by others as being more meek. He starts to take charge in this issue in ways that he's overriding what he's being told, mainly because he's recognizing the crisis that's in front of him. And we see, and I know I'm jumping ahead a bit with this, but it was something.
No, I think you got it. I mean, that's kind of crucial to Azarus. Even in issue 1, you start developing that. But go ahead.
One of the things that I really liked about this issue was, I'm like, you knew that the character had potential, and where it was always interesting following him where he's going. This was the issue where we started to see him say, "No, this is not the. I know what you're telling me, but this is not the way it's going to go down. I am here. I can do this." And we're seeing him take a much more active role, whereas before he was being dismissed and in many ways persecuted almost by the people that he was working with. Not everybody, but we had 2 guys in particular in the earlier issues who were really treating him poorly and not even recognizing the potential of him. And I loved seeing his arc. And that's one of the nice things I love about this is I've read this issue multiple times now, and every time I've read it, I've focused on different characters because I think they have their own journey that's going on in the midst of this crisis. And I think we get to know a lot about them through the events that are happening. And that's something that's probably the most sincere compliment I can give this book is the more I get to know each of these characters, the ones that stay with us, the more I'm starting to get bonded and attached to them because I feel like there's a lot that you learn through how people deal with extreme situations. And this is the issue where really everything kind of goes crazy for them all. And we get to really see who steps up and how in a situation that is really out of everyone's control, including the people who were playing Puppet Master, which is something that I found that was really interesting about this.
Yes, are you trying not to give away too much, but at the same time, it's like, part of this was planned, and part of it was, oops, it didn't go. It went beyond the plans, and what I want, a couple things is I try to do is not have things spoon fed in a way. You know, there's times where you have to have what is it called? What's it called in a movie where just specifically someone's saying something just to get the audience
plot point.
Yeah, like what's the tech? Yeah. Well, whatever that, I can't think of the word right now, but I kind of wanted people to get to know their characters through the action, and then maybe have a little bit more dialogue as far as personal and relationship type conversations. So in issue 3, we do get a little bit of like family dynamic and stuff like that. So I think it's a little bit of a mix, and ultimately the first 2 issues I wanted it to come out with like 007 beginning of a movie or something or Breaking Bad, or some of my influences, The Abyss. I probably mentioned this the last time I was on. It's just some of these movies where I thought, wow, what a nice, you get a little bit of the characters are acting, and then the crap just hits the fan, and then so now you're introduced to the universe and to this world they're in. So, and each one of their positions in different areas on the space station, and how that's going to work out. So,
you've done a really good job with this one, by the way, on that backstory you were talking about, that character development, but not losing the action side of it. Because I can remember, as I'm reading through this, like when Azrath is racing, to get to the space bay, and he's doing all his stuff. I've kind of have that, what's the song? I Need a Hero. Kind of racing through as I see him going, and he's running through, and then you got these moments of these dialogue between the people, but you never lose that action and that sense of excitement that he's going with. So, and we got some really cool development on this religious front. We kind of had some teasers before. We're getting a little bit more into that, and I like the fact that we're kind of getting some more glimpses into this universe that is.
You mean like the supernatural?
Yeah,
the supernatural breach.
Yeah, we're starting to get some glimpses into that, and this you got a nice blend going here, and I'm very happy with the way the story's evolving and going through. One thing I am curious though on, because you're dealing with a lot of different factions. Do you have like a giant? I don't know, like a giant board or something like that to direct you so you don't lose your way when you're creating this.
Well, it's not a giant board, but it's there are certain things that are pretty concrete in my head that I want to get to, and then I have a million ideas that I write down here and there, and then I kind of I kind of put them all, like there is a giant board, per se, and so I kind of start to structure, okay, what do I need to do, and what are some ideas that I can keep, at arm's reach, just in case it fits somewhere, So I might have a joke that I thought of that would be funny. Like, actually, there was a joke that I thought of a while ago, and I'm like, I wonder, that could be a scene in my book, and I don't think I'm going to use it anymore because I saw a commercial the other day where it was they used the exact same joke. So I've had this joke for years where someone's gonna, and it might even have been done more than once, but it was recently in a pretty popular commercial, I think even the Super Bowl. But people are sitting around someone on a computer, and they're like, or there's a scenario where the person has to log in and everyone's waiting on them, and it's all crucial, and they go in to do the login, and it's like and I don't even think he would divulge what the password was, but it's something so vulgar that everybody's like turns red and it's like, oh my gosh. And they kind of, I don't know if you saw that commercial, but the guy's like the general, and they're like, you need to log in, and the commercial, and he's like, has to say his password out loud, and it's something like "I hate my job" or something. And everybody's like, "Oh, geez," you know. So I was like.
That was that Need to Get Away commercial for one of the airline. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it was so well done in that commercial. I was like, okay, I guess I'm throwing that one out. So you can imagine, like, I have ideas like that I just have floating around, and I try to see if those are fit. Those are minor ideas. But then as far as plot-driven character development, I'm like, okay, there's these certain things I want to accomplish. And actually, though, I was a big fan of the Battlestar Galactica revisit with by Moore.
Oh yeah,
and I ate everything up on that show. I listened to every podcast. I listened to podcasts about the show. I listened to his podcast as he talked. He would watch the episode.
It was phenomenal. That podcast was phenomenal.
But what blew me away too was they had 12 Cylons that were, didn't even know they were Cylons. And he was like, well, we didn't even know who they were going to be yet. It was organic, in that sense. I mean, they had a vision and all that. And I everybody has their different styles. So there's some aspects to my story that is organic, and the characters are just going to take me there. And then there's other things I just want to do. So it's kind of a mix.
So we put a spoiler warning at the beginning of this episode, and I want to remind everyone, right about now, I want to talk spoilery about issue 2. And I was kind of teasing it up to this point only because of the fact that I figured I wanted to give part of this where we could kind of introduce people to this world without getting super spoilery if they didn't want to have it ruined. But we talked spoilery with issue 0 and 1, and this is too good of an opportunity to talk about issue 2 because we've already been alluding to a lot of this. So I want to make sure that we don't take some of the cool things going on with characters like Nimrod and stuff like that and not talk about them, because he's an example of somebody who things go, I don't want to say horribly wrong. Well, I guess he would do kind of. He had this plan in play where he was transporting himself to a new body and had gotten away with it. And then the events that are going on in the station lead to his plans not quite going the way that he originally intended. And I so loved the way that this was playing out because I really liked that the focus of the story was not just on the heroes. And I don't know how you categorize Nimrod, which is, I think, one of the fun parts about the character, because I still feel like I'm getting to know him. And I feel like this issue was one more step in getting to understand the Nimrod puzzle, because you talked about earlier on in this discussion about the thought plane and the fact that you're introducing the thought plane into this book. And we really get to see a lot of the thought plane through Nimrod in this issue and get this idea of, wow, what we think about his death and what was happening with him is so much more fleshed out here. And they were analyzing in the beginning of this issue with these teleportation pieces that were on his body. And they're saying that there was, it wasn't the explosion. There was another layer that was in play as a part of this quote-unquote assassination. And they're trying through forensic evidence to try and figure out what really happened here to him. And I love that as a reader, we at a certain point in time get to see what really was happening with Nimrod and see it through his eyes and start to see him try to enact his plan. But whenever there's chaos going on, chaos affects everybody. And I love that about this event, because too often in stories like this, there's always somebody that just seems to benefit from the chaos without being scathed at all. I love that this is so chaotic that what Azarus is doing in that moment changes the plans that Nimrod had, so that his plan for his new quote-unquote body goes awry. And we see him transported back to the thought plane.
I racked my brain when he's there floating, and he just got through to his new clone, and he gets incinerated. And I'm like, what does he think? Because he doesn't have a mouth, he can't audibly speak. And I'm not opposed to these thought bubbles. I don't know why that went out of thing. I kind of racked my brain should I use thought bubbles or not? And I'm or balloons, so I'm doing it, but I'm just like, what should he say? I mean, should it be funny? What? And I was throwing things out, and it's just like, I came up with what I did, but yeah, I just thought that to die twice. He comes in like a suicidal maniac, and then oh wait, he's not a suicidal maniac, and then he gets incinerated. It's kind of comical, but it's also, I think, dramatic at the same time. At least is what I was going for.
What I loved about this issue is the events were unfolding, and we see our heroes kind of traveling around and trying to save the station and save themselves. I like how I talked about there being wide open spaces and how big this was. I like how quickly it started to feel claustrophobic. Oh. And I loved that shift because I admire the vastness. But when you're in space, I think one of the great fears is, well, that's fine as long as everything is enclosed and contained and you can breathe. The second that you start taking into the fact that systems are failing and things are going horribly wrong, this large space starts to become a tomb, and things start to close down.
Giant space station, yeah.
I loved that sense of danger in this because I was admiring the vastness, and then I was like, oh my gosh, everything starts to feel so enclosed so fast.
Oh, I think the panel that might drive that home the most is in issue 2. Let me ask you. Let's see. Go into issue 2. I don't know if you have it there.
I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, so starting with the story, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Page 10 of the story. So don't count the first page with the credits. Page 10, where we have E-Tech and Riel. And I love this panel idea. So they get, as systems are failing and the station's getting sawed in half. Or,
yes.
Well, not in half. I can't say that, but I mean, just it's getting sawed down. A good portion of it. The station kicks in and starts automatically closing off different. What the heck are they called? Oh my gosh! I do all this research and I can't remember.
Hatches.
It's closing off hatches, but space stations, are sectioned out by different modules. There you go, modules. Yeah. So, like, if something were to be catastrophically happening to certain aspect or portion of the space station, each module can like close off. I mean, so that's happening, and so Riel and E-Tech get kind of closed off. Everybody does in certain areas. And I show Riel, the artist, the vision I had was they're behind the hatch closing. And when I'm doing a lettering, and when I was lettering, I was like, wouldn't it feel even more dramatic if part of her word bubbles are actually getting closed? It's going to be chopped in half, so her speech is coming from behind the hatch door, and then the rest of her speech is coming out of it. So I don't know if that effect came across, but are you looking at what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. Where she's saying, "Dear God," and you see it like actually it's closing on the words.
Yes, I mean I was having fun with that, and I think that panel kind of is one of those ones where you start to feel a little claustrophobic because it's like they're closed in, and the design of it was brilliant by the artist.
I loved that sense. Actually, Jim and I were talking recently about whitewater rafting, and we both had similar experiences where our boats were flipped over and we were pulled under and stuff like that. And you get that sense of, being claustrophobic, trapped under the water. And as I was reading this, I was like, oh my gosh, I've got that feeling again. It was like, which is great. I love when a book starts to come to life. I think when you're successful in delivering a story, it's when you start to, these pages stop being flat and they start to naturally become three-dimensional, and you feel like you're following.
Okay. Good point.
You see things that are happening that aren't. Panels are setting you up for a thought process of. I mentioned motion earlier, And that's where your mind starts to fill in what was happening in between the panels. And I really loved when this story started transporting me there, and you start seeing these hatches shut on the modules like you're talking about, and you start feeling like, man, this really is feeling tight now. and the character dialogue is matching what's going on, and you're being transported to a mood, not just reading along with the story. You're starting to feel emotional with it. I wasn't hearing I'm holding out for a hero, but
well, that is one of my songs coming up in the Kickstarter.
I actually strangely want to reread the issue again, listening to that just to see, because that was not what I was expecting. But that's why I love.
No, but I can see where he's coming at. Like that is definitely how Azarus kind of I think peers over and looks at something as he's going up like a ladder to fix something, and he sees some kind of like corporate motivational poster, be all that you can be. And I can see where you're coming from with the song, because it's kind of like Azarus is coming into not only to be more in control and make decisions, but not just decisions, but decisions that aren't just for himself or for his own well-being. So
I found reading this book interesting because I have two different reads through this, and I don't know. I'd be interested to know if other readers experience it differently, because I'm sure, that's one of the nice things about art is there's no wrong way to approach it. It's what, emotionally you get attached to. I think the first time through when I was reading this, I was focused on Azarus. And so my read-throughs, every time when I read an issue, I just, for some reason, tend to latch on to Azarus. And that tends to be my Azarus read-through. And I tend to try to focus on that character, what's going on with him. And it's not something I forcibly do. It's just something that naturally happens. And then as I got to know Riel more, I have a Riel read where I just, for some reason, I'm more linked to Riel and what she's doing and what's going on with her. And, then I think through the two of them, for some reason, it tends to encompass every other character then. And I'm not saying that that's right for everybody or that's how everybody's read is. That's just what naturally happens to me without it being forced. And I think Azarus because of the visual of Azarus, I think I was always drawn to the Azarus visual from the beginning. So I just think it's a character that I'm always trying to find out, because Azarus is kind of a gradual build. So you get to know bits and pieces of Azarus along the way, and it's like this great mystery that you're kind of going through as you get to know this character. There's more layers there than you initially realize, and it's like a promise fulfilled along the way. And it's got to be fun as a writer to be writing a character like that. You mentioned like how sometimes there's things that are just organic and they happen organically, and I think it's. What you feel organically is something that we as readers tend to feel organically, just because I think there's just kind of something natural about that transference. And Riel's been kind of the same way for me, where Riel was this like happy surprise of this character that I'm like, wow, I'm really digging her. And And, seeing her kind of reaction, even I remember the last issue 1, where there was that sequence where she was connected mentally to what was going on and thought her arm, actually felt her arm being sliced off in that sequence. And I still remember that, to this day. And you come back and then you see her now in this leadership position where she's handling these circumstances as they're going on. And that's the human side. I think she's this well-rounded human that, allows us the accessibility of being there. And I feel like through Riel, it's like, okay, this is what it'd be like if I was there. And I would be running around with Riel, hopefully not being one of the victims. And really, I'm seeing things through her eyes. And I really enjoy the interplay of those characters. And it's something that... I think it's been interesting that my reads have been, I don't want to say segmented because that's not the right way to say it, but it's more, my focus shifts in multiple read-throughs. And I love that. I'm a big fan of that in comics. I like the the value of being able to go back through and read it again. And when you focus on another character, you see the events. I even see Azarus differently when I'm in my Riel read, because I'm kind of looking at it from, the human perspective. And I think it's fun to be able to kind of look at this world from different perspectives. And I think when you see it from the eyes of different characters, you're witnessing the events with Azarus as opposed to joining Azarus and seeing it from his side. And I think it's a cool thing with this book that you can do when you go through, if you're focused on a certain character. I think you do see the story events unfolding in a different way. And I really am enjoying this about this read.
Well, that's, to me, I mean, thanks for that's kind of a good thing, I think, because there's different things you pick up with any kind of entertainment. That, I mean, how many times can you listen to a song, right?
Sure.
And you get to know it and memorize it, but there's even I might have heard a song for years, and then all of a sudden a specific lyric, because maybe you're going through something different, I mean, I've been listening to, let's say, Zeppelin since I was a teenager and even younger, but I got into Zeppelin huge when I was young. And then I'll listen to them today, and of course my worldview and my life experience and all these kinds of things, a lyric I know might just hit me in a different way and be all the more profound. And their music is so, in depth and rich with, just beauty. So if you're getting that from the story and you're seeing something new, and it still offers you more, that's huge. I'm honored. And to be able to resonate with Riel is definitely intentional. And Riel is one of the plot and character arcs I'm so excited about. I mean, I love good. I don't know if you guys are watching a TV show called This Is. I don't watch much TV or movies lately because I'm just day job, kids, and this book is, and I sometimes sleep. But this is. Have you seen This Is Us?
Yes.
And okay, so I'm doing sci-fi, but what This Is Us is doing is something I want to dabble with. Is like This Is Us is insanely brilliant, and the characters and the relationships and the gut punches and the reality of and how you can relate to the characters and whatever they're going through or how human they are. And so I want my sci-fi to be human, and so Riel is that, obviously is crucial because she is human. Azarus is not human. So, but Azarus is partly human. So I want to deal with some of the, philosophical questions of what does it mean to be human with Azarus, and kind of from a human's perspective, what it might be like to be something like Azarus. And us humans can relate to questions that Azarus is dealing with, like from people who were slaves. I mean, Azarus is a genetically engineered worker clone. Of course, that gets into the question of the value of life, human life. He's partly human. So there's a huge aspect of history and people who can look at that, and or being a pet or being an animal, or it's awesome to hear, because issue 3. Then I hope you appreciate some of the Riel storyline that I put together, because I'm loving it. I get a little bit a little bit into her personal story. So I would like to. I'm hoping that comes across and gives you even more intrigue to what's going to happen and who she is. So
I think when you talk about This Is Us, and I think the great thing about sci-fi, and I think the best sci-fi does this well, it matches up to your best TV dramas, and the reason why is forget the fact that you're dealing with aliens and clones and every possible scientific concoction that you can come up with. The best of the best of sci-fi really draws from great drama. It is the political, the interpersonal relationships and things like that are naturally drawn out from the different groupings that naturally go into place because of the differences between all of these creations, that the best sci-fi matches so well up to that because of it. One of my favorite scenes was the scene where they thought, I mentioned the claustrophobia, then it leads to this sequence where she thinks she's dead. And you see this moment with her and E-Tech where, she's basically, Dad, sorry, I haven't called you in a while since I just wanted to hear your voice before. Well, I need you to know I love you. She's trying to prepare herself to say goodbye because she sees the potential of this going south. And I mean, it is happening around her, but she sees this being, for as much as she keeps finding creative ways to survive and to make it through, there's this part of her that's realizing the sheer danger. And that serves a lot of different purposes. It serves to add the humanity to her that we get to see, but it also adds this...
I'm glad that part hit you that way.
This sense of danger that was, it was ever increasing in this. This is a very emotional issue for me, and I really loved that aspect of it. You get to see these great visuals and this massive thing because the promise of issue 0, right, was talking about the mother son and the power of that, and I think as this series has progressed, you start to really respect space, all of the possible anomalies that are in there, power, the fact that we're really people who are out in outer space for any reason are explorers. And any exploration that you're doing, there's this sense of danger. It's what do you love about Indiana Jones movies, the really good ones, Raiders of the Lost Ark and things like that. It's this sense of exploration, this sense of danger from every turn, and this delivers that and that emotion, and it's something that I really enjoyed about this issue.
Oh man, thanks. Yeah, my editor really liked that sequence too. She said that touched her, Leah Letterman. So. And then you got the contrast at the time where she decides to call her dad. I think it might. I don't know if it comes across a little bit of maybe guilt that she had. She probably was dealing with a little bit of guilt, not even had talked to him if things were going well. That was already on her mind or on her conscience, and then yet now she's like, well, I could be dead, and better do something. And then E-Tech's over there worried about all his life's work because that's what is dear and near to his heart, So it's kind of like, a little bit of a contrast of E-Tech first, and then you go into her with a more human kind of reaction.
Yeah, I do like the massive sense of danger we have built throughout this issue, with just the ending of the issue, this epic piece of chunk of the station's falling apart. They've got a runaway ship ramming into them. It's like you sit there and say, okay, they're about to die, but they're the main characters. They're like, are they going to die? Are they going to survive? I love that pending doom and destruction. That's something that you got a nice balance on just the beauty of the chaos and the destruction, but you have that very real feeling of they could die right now. So what's going to happen next? It's a great way to, kind of it's that great ending to the issue to just get you going, okay, I need 3 now.
Oh man, that's awesome. I kind of enjoyed the concept of them, and then Azra's sub is coming toward them, and E-Tech thinks that, Azra's is on his way to save us, and and it's like, he's like out of control, and he's about to crash, and then they're like, no, he's not on his way. So that you gotta try to have a good cliffhanger, and then Tyler just nailed it that last page with this kind of like epic, almost like a poster art, like a good comic has for a cliffhanger. So. Yeah, I've been so drowning in Kickstarter and marketing and cons and, producing issue 3 that it's fun to get back into this because I haven't been looking at the actual story as much lately because I've been so focused on other things. So, which I will be as soon as this Kickstarter is done. I'm going to be, getting the pencils out or the typewriter out, I guess, and getting everything nailed in stone for issue 4. So, which is interesting on issue 3 as far as the story. I have Leah Letterman as the editor on this issue 2, and I eventually was impressed with her. I was like, you know what, I would like you to co-write. So she's going to be premiering her co-writing on issue 3. So she kind of gets us going in the beginning sequences for issue 3, and then of course not only editing but giving input to the story. And it's nice having another person's perspective to help flesh out a huge sci-fi kind of future universe, and then from a female perspective, I think that might help as well. So it gives that kind of an advantage, especially with Riel being one of my main focuses. So.
I'm glad to hear the colorist is returning for issue 3. And the reason why is in issue 2, one of the things I really appreciated, and I absolutely love the artwork throughout issue 2. I really noticed the benefit of the color work in this, because you've got these dark corridors in the interiors, and you shift from that to this brightness of explosions happening, of the exterior with everything that's going on out there. There's this sense of, I mentioned the claustrophobia, but then you get this sense of vastness and the danger of the vastness that's out there as things are happening. I really loved the contrast, and I think the color work did a lot to add to that sense of trapped to vast, overwhelmingly huge danger happening outside, that I thought was it was a really nice balance, and it really is from the color tones that you're just like, it pops out at you and you're like, whoa. And it's and I think you need that, because you have to appreciate the danger that's happening on the outside to, I think, feel more confined on the inside. And that was the piece that I think color work really paid off on that. And I as a fan, I'm not an artist. I don't have an artist background. I don't always, and it's no insult to artistic teams or colorists or anything like that, I don't always catch the nuances. But then there's sometimes you have opportunities like this where it's like, wow, this is something where really the marriage of the pencils, inking, and color work all coming together really delivered this powerful pow of a moment that emotionally hit me, and I was really able to appreciate the color pop and the choices that were made there to give you this sense of fire that really looked well in this issue.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of a concern I had, because I had Tyler Thaw was doing my colors and my layouts in issues 1 and 2, and Tyler is more, he's like really into the concept art and artist for gaming, and wants to get into movies and stuff like that. So that's what he's been doing a lot of work on. So to have him get the ball rolling, I was good. But Tyler left, and I was like, oh my gosh, freaking out. And we had to really kind of try to mesh and transition over to Irwin and Neil Anderson, which Irwin actually did some work. I had him do the prologue in issue 0. So I've been working with Irwin for a while, because the prologue's kind of its own little thing. It's a little bit of the history to set up this universe. And then I had Irwin fully do the first several pages of issue 1, because it starts out with a dream sequence. And so I thought, I would like that to be a little bit of a different style. Well, little did I know I was going to have to also transition from Tyler to Neil as far as ultimate colors. But the way I was able to do it was break, and I hope it works. I mean, maybe divulging this people will notice, but Neil starts to come in with the supernatural view. So because you can see the color shifts, there's got to be a different look when you're looking at things from in the supernatural realm, the thought dimension, and then of course you got your physical realm. So. And then in issue 3, we have some flashbacks. So that's going to be kind of like, so one of my concerns is I don't want to be jumping too much, and maybe I could be guilty of that. But at the same time, I think as long as it makes sense and the art is magnificent, which I know we've accomplished, and it's not because I did it. It's because I have amazing talent working with me. So I think it's going to all work, and it kind of will fit the, like you're saying, are we looking for something that's intimate or claustrophobic, or are we looking for something where we're seeing the large scale epic destruction, and how should the colors, convey that, or the layout and whatnot. So.
Yeah, it's a very, very pretty book, and one of the hard things that you accomplished, I think, when you go from issues 0, 1 to 2, it feels like the same book, and I think I give a lot of credit to the art teams for being able to pull that off too.
And part of it is because the story does change, like even in issue, I think it's the end of issue 1 and issue 2. They go into Nimrod's closet, and he's built this gigantic holographic room. And it's like, that's not the supernatural, but I'm kind of playing with the idea that that's kind of one of the gateways, is this kind of like virtual reality, like kind of technology might tie in, obviously, to some degree. So he builds this virtual reality room in his closet, and so the colors have got to be different in there, right? So that's where Neil we start to put Neil into it. So
I am so curious to what's happening with Azrael and Nimrod for the next issue. I'm like salivating. It's like, okay.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I know. It's like, well, I know what happens with issue 3, so now I'm like, okay, what are we going to get into in issue 4, and cover? How much are we going to cover at issue 4? And so that's going to be the grind for the issue 4. But yeah, I'm excited with issue 3, man. I mean, it's funny. The second you get one of the issues and you're printed in your hand, it's like, I want the next one. It's like. Yeah, it's all of a sudden the satisfaction's gone, and you just want the next one. So I'm kind of like I hear a lot of writers are like, I can't wait to find out what happens myself. It's like, at least as far as when it, because you have a lot of influences. I got the co-writing, and then I got the artist influence. Like the space station was never going to be this huge until Tyler and I started working on it. And part of the space station, I think, is going to be is it's huge, is because of where it is.
Sure.
That was, to me, was supposed to be one of the reveals in issue 1, was this kind of like, to me, it's like the sun is such a fascinating reminder of, I don't know about you guys, it seems like in our society, in our culture, in our enlightened, culture, we're so smart. We've learned so much scientifically, and there's just this no need for the mystery of, is there some kind of supernatural, or is there some kind of a creator, or some kind of bigger meaning? And because we got all these answers now, and I'm like, I just can't comprehend that. It's like, it seems like, wow, we do know a lot, but all the stuff we've learned, all the more makes what is this world in our lives is more mysterious. It's more fascinating. It's more intriguing. And yet there's more I don't even know. Like, we don't even know if space continues forever, or if it ends, or, we don't even know how many stars there are. And the sun itself, just one star, is so fascinating. And that they're out there that close, to me, I thought, it was kind of just like an epic idea, that in sci-fi, it's been done here and there, but that's something to me that fascinates as we study and become closer to the sun. So this space station, I'm thinking, all that being said, is huge out of necessity, and because of the gravitational pull and because of the environment it's in, it's going to be, a lot of it is going to be not even inhabited. It's going to have to be just technology and there just to sustain itself.
It's amazing. It's I love that sense of awe in this, and I think that's something that has struck me throughout it. It's I think you're right. The scope and scale of the station is something that really struck me as surprising, and to shift from, it was interesting to shift from talking about so early in this issue about how I admired the vastness of it, to then tell you, and then I was tight and constricted and in the same setting with it. I think
the universe is so massive and huge, and space is so, and the sun is so magnificent, and then you're like, all of a sudden, how tiny are we? You know?
Yeah, that emotional contrast was really, really cool. Do you and I don't know if this is something you would have a direct answer for right now. I don't know how when you crafted the story, and we may have discussed this previously, and if I'm retreading old ground, I apologize. But you had me thinking about this. Is there like an arc for this initial first story, like a length that you're shooting for? Or is it something that like the story's kind of leading, like the events, but you're letting it organically get you there? How is that working as far as that piece goes?
That's what I'm gonna figure out specifically when I tackle issue 4 and all that, because I'm getting to the point where I'm like, you know what? I kind of like just have this epic story, and then I have these character arcs that I want to delve in. I would like to do everything, but right now I'm like, okay, what am I going to at least build a sub ending for? Because I could write this book for a while, and I need to do a trade, so I want to have some kind of sub ending at least. And so I'm gonna try to I'm gonna try to figure out of the character arcs, exactly to what degree I'm gonna take each character in the sub ending, and then we'll see as I keep doing this if it continues to build success, then maybe I can go and like do the next trade and get more into the epic story as well, the ultimate implications of mankind or humankind, I guess, to entering the supernatural realm with advanced technology. So yeah, I'm gonna like figure that out and see, okay, how can I write the character arc sub stories and do it effectively as needed, and then make it like a trade. So that's whether it takes, let's see, I'm on issue 3's coming out. And so what is a trade? Like a variation of trades are like 7 issues, 6?
They go anywhere from 4 to 7 issues. And I think, I prefer that decision to be story driven. So I'm actually geeking out and smiling from ear to ear in the way that you're organically getting there. And the reason why I'm saying that is just because I see the potential of this story. So that was where my question came from. I guess what I didn't want to hear from you was, well, I'm planning like 6 or 7 issues and then we're done. It's like what I'm hearing. I like hearing that. Well, I can see an arc ending in like 6 or 7 issues, and then continuing on with the larger story as it goes through, because there's so much potential here. I feel like there's been so much depth in each issue, but yet it feels like it's also just scratching the surface at the same time. And those are my favorite kind of sci-fi epics, where I referenced Babylon 5 earlier. And I really, you mentioned the new Battlestar Galactica. I think those two shows had so much in common as far as...
They were both Ron Moore, weren't they?
Straczynski did Babylon 5, but I don't know if Moore was involved.
I think Moore actually had something to do with it too.
He might have.
I think
Moore, Moore came on my radar with Battlestar Galactica because of his podcast, which I think anybody who's doing a show with that kind of character depth should consider doing a podcast like he did, because as a fan, I was rewatching the episodes along with his podcast.
Okay, so you were like me, and you're just like into every detail.
Well, my gosh, that podcast was phenomenal.
Yes, because the movie, the story, the comic book is amazing art in and of itself. But what is just as amazing is how did it get to be? What were the decisions that influenced there? Why did you decide this and that? Who came up with that? And so that, to me, is that's might even be more entertaining.
I agree. And he had cast members on. For people who are listening to this that don't know what we're talking about, Ronald D. Moore did a companion podcast to Battlestar Galactica, and they went episode by episode along with that. And every so often he would have different cast members come on to talk about, especially if they were a focus in that episode, to talk about that episode. And sometimes it was ones who weren't featured on that one, which was also interesting to have them kind of talking about these other character arcs. So it was just a great show, companion piece, that were revealing some of the things that maybe you missed, or telling the genesis or origins.
Wow, or the deeper meaning, it was cool.
It was sweet. It's no accident that we do a podcast like we do. I love the fact that, when we're done reading comics, to go back through and really, Jim and I was joking around earlier about Jim's song choice, and it really was a joke. One of the things I really enjoy about doing this show with Jim when we talk about books in depth is the fact that because we're different people, we read differently and we see things differently and experience things differently. So Jim will do that, actually. He'll throw out songs every so often that he was thinking of emotionally that evoke emotion to him in a particular sequence. And
music has a way of doing that, right?
It makes me go back and reread issues sometimes where I'll read them with some of his thoughts in my head. Yeah. And you kind of see something from a different perspective. And it's fun. It's a fun way to enjoy this medium because it's such a, I think, depth-filled art form, because you can do things in comics you cannot do in any other medium. I'm a firm believer that comics are able to deliver stories that are very hard to get off the ground in other medium. I think it's the reason why you see television and film coming to comics for great stories. Because
Ender's Game, classic sci-fi novel, was trying to be made into a movie for years, and they finally said, let's just do a comic series on it. And look at what happened. Of course, that was the plot or the layout for it to become a movie. So.
And why not? I mean, the medium actually is a natural storyboard. I mean, so it's
because you're going to take a novel and you're going to storyboard it into a comic book. So the comic book is this beautiful mix between in between a novel and an actual movie or so. So yeah, comic books are unique in that way. The best of both worlds, from a movie to a novel.
So I just want to remind everybody to check out the Kickstarter if you haven't before. The nice part is it's good for those of listeners who are listening to this that were with us for the last one and were able to jump on board and support Staunch Ambition. If you haven't, this is a great time to jump on board because there's so many tiers that are very affordable that offer you the opportunity to pick up the entire series either digitally or physically, which is really great. And you offer a lot of signed extras and visual extras and things. I mean, it's such a great... I gotta
mention that there's Kickstarter exclusives that no one else can buy. I don't sell them at comic conventions. They're limited. They're numbered. They're signed. I have some issue 1 signed by Freddie Williams and some preview issues signed by Chloe Pham. And I'm going to have some issues, an exclusive for issue 3 that only Kickstarters can get, and it comes with an exclusive numbered print. So, I'm running out of issue 1 exclusives and issue 2s because, like I said, they're numbered there. So I only printed, I forget how many, but so many of them. And I'm running out of those. And then issue 3 is going to have an exclusive variant cover, the Clayton Crane cover still, but it's an alternate reality. And a print with that, and then you can get those signed by Clayton. So with a certificate of authenticity, I'm cross-promoting with Alterna Comics, so you get a digital download of one of their independent books, a science fiction horror, gorgeous book called Sontinus, and there's a lot of rewards: prints, shirts. You can't be a character anymore; that's already taken. But we can have your art in the book or an advertisement. So the exclusives is something to where I want to give people something in a Kickstarter that they can't get anywhere else. I want incentive for you to, because I gotta have a successful Kickstarter, or else I can't do this. I simply can't do this independent book. So.
I encourage people, too, if you support the Kickstarter or are interested in Staunch Ambition in any way, please retweet this out, share it on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, whatever social media that you're using. Share it out. It's really important, the community aspect of comics and getting the word out. there's so many of us that the nice part about comics nowadays is it's such a diverse landscape of different types of stories that we all know people that may not be aware that this book exists, but are fans of this type of science fiction.
And get it tattooed on your body. That would be helpful. Somewhere prominent. Yeah. Not on your face, but I mean, come on. I'm not asking much. Yeah. But the point is...
But wait, let me ask you a question. If somebody gets it tattooed on their face...
Is to share it is pretty easy to share. And this is a grassroots, so it would be well appreciated.
I'm not backing away from somebody getting it tattooed on their face. Will they get in the book if they do?
That'd be cool. I want that photo at a Comic-Con. But it's the grassroots, independent. So it would be nice if millions of people in this world who would love this. The art is what you have to like that first, and then come in and try it out, and then I love this story. It would be. The trick is okay. How do you get that to the people? And it's grassroots.
Guys, is there anything else about Staunch Ambition that I've left out that either of you want to talk about? Jim, any questions you had? Brian, anything that you wanted to share that I haven't promoted?
I don't know. I mean, I can go on. I mean, I think we covered the basics of there's things, to promote and check out them. I mean, the music. I mean, it sounds like Jim is like you imagine the music that goes along with it. I'm a huge fan of music and musical composers, films. So like Bear McCreary, who did the music for Battlestar Galactica. He's a James Horner was one of my favorite composers, who did Braveheart and the Titanic, which those are like Braveheart's great, but the Titanic he did stuff like Beautiful Mind and Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. Amazing composer, and Bear McCreary is very influenced and very much like him. And so having music for my book is, to me, important because, I mean, if you ever seen like a demonstration of movie scenes with and without the music, it's like, it's nothing without the music, right? I mean, it doesn't have the pull, the push. It doesn't take you there unless it's intended to be quiet, like the explosion in the latest Star Wars, movie where it was just completely quiet. Every once in a while that, but the music is so crucial. So having 2 new songs is so fun, and I couldn't be happier with them. It fits the sci-fi, and you'll get a taste of it if you look at the trailer on Kickstarter.
That's amazing. Actually, a podcast I listened to for years, Comic Geek Speak. Years ago, somebody had mentioned, and I don't remember if it was in their forum or on one of their episodes, about and it had a whole thread of songs you listen to or soundtracks you listen to while reading comics, and so many of the science fiction and related soundtracks are really great to read comics to. And I've done that from time to time because I've got a lot of them that I listen to in the car, that are just some of my favorites. You mentioned Wrath of Khan. What a great soundtrack that was.
One of the best ever.
You can put those on softly in the background and read, and it does. It evokes really cool emotion when you're reading comics to do that. So it's something I recommend for anybody listening. If you haven't done that before, take some of your favorite sci-fi soundtracks, play them softly in the background. I can't take credit for the idea, but it really is a great way to enjoy this medium. And it just adds a different layer to it. And I do it from time to time where I'll just be like, I feel like listening to some music while I'm reading this. And
that's great. And that's the intention with the music that we're doing here. So
that's great. I love the idea of a musical companion piece because I will definitely use it.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, I want to thank you, as always, for coming back on and giving us an opportunity to chat with you, not just about the Kickstarter, but about the book in general, because we're big fans. And very excited for the success and for another issue to be coming out. So you're always very generous with your time with us, and it's really appreciated.
Oh, thank you. I mean, the honor's mine. I mean, just thank you so much for the insight, and it's so awesome to hear your perspective on the story. It's hard to know because it's like being a fish in water. I mean, it's like I'm so inside of the story. It's hard to know what it looks like from the outside, and so getting your opinion. I mean, even hearing your viewpoint in depth influences ideas on how to handle things and what's working and what to keep doing and stuff. So it's been such an honor to be back on the show and to touch base with you guys. So I'm really looking forward to the reaction to issue 3 and the music and everything. So.
Well, we definitely love to have you back on to talk about issue 3 and to follow up with us again, because this is a journey we're enjoying going on. So this definitely won't be our last conversation.
Yeah, and any Freddie William fans out there, I don't know if you guys get a lot of that because you've been real close with him, but I'm running out of those signed copies by him, so get them while they last.
Well, I got one on the Kickstarter.
Yeah, I got one too.
And the Kickstarter, that's one of my rewards. I dove off of that one. I'm backer number 35.
Man, awesome.
So I'm excited to be. I actually like that. I don't know if Kickstarter does that for all of them or not. I like knowing, that we've got other. How many other backers there are, and it's exciting to be a part of a cog in the chain.
Brilliant.
It is. Kickstarter's great. I actually I like the community aspect.
You're part of it. Like you said, it's a community. You're part of. Like I say that in my Kickstarter. I'm like anyone who backs it, you're a part of the creative team. And my editor is like, creative team in it, and I'm like, well, I mean, I don't think I'm being hyperbolic here. I'm like. I can't create this book without backers. And so you guys are like, yeah, in the production aspect of it, but it's like, and then talking to you, I mean, you guys are like influencing me as a writer on what works, what doesn't work, what you love, what you don't love. So like, you're part of the creative team, man, in my opinion. So I feel that way when I back someone else's book. And I was a part of this before it became something, you know what I mean? So fun.
That's great. It's a different, like I said earlier, we've gone from a hobby that was very isolated to one that's very community driven, and I think it's a great positive to comics nowadays.
Yeah, and your name's in the book and your podcast in the book, so you guys are really part of it. So I'm so honored to be on the show again. It was so good to touch base. We got to hook up at a con someday.
Absolutely, I can't wait to meet you in person. No, definitely. All right.
Nice work, Atom. What are these characters up to?
And our next discussion will be on Nightwing number 41. The writer is Sam Humphries, with art by Bernard Chang and Jamal Campbell, with colors by Jamal Campbell and Marcello Maiolo, with letters by Carlos M. Mangual, and the cover by Chang and Maiolo. It's the Maiolo. I'm not exactly sure how to go with that one. Variant covers by Yasmin Putri and group editor Jamie S. Rich. Rob Levin is the associate editor, with Chris Conroy editor, and Nightwing was created by Marv Wolfman and George Perez.
And we're done. So thanks for coming, everybody. It was just an exercise in like misery for you trying. It's funny when we do these things. I mentioned it many times on the show. We do it with the best intention of honoring creators, and I would have been doing the same thing you were doing. Which this book in particular is one that we want to honor the people that are creating this. This is a great read, Nightwing, and what has amazed me about this character has been throughout his history as Nightwing, the amount of great creators that have touched on this character and just managed to get it right. This story, The Untouchable, with the judge who, now Jacob DeWitt, he is the original judge, the one that they were showing on, the historical piece, right? Isn't that how you're taking it too? He's just survived all those years?
Yeah, he's got some immortality thing going on that he got from the water, from the bay, from the mystic science that is Bloodhaven, because Bloodhaven's got a lot of mojo, rolling through it. So this is the original guy as far as I'm reading everything.
One of the things I really like about this particular storyline was it adds some more like history and lore, with the big tree in the city and Dick Grayson's background. He'd been there he'd been against the Judge before as Robin. So we're adding the Batman and Robin relationship in there, and how this is, I like Dick Grayson because Dick Grayson's human. And I think the best stories with Dick Grayson really, we always talk about he's, been the big brother figure to Tim Drake, to Jason Todd, to Damian. And I think he's that way to all of us. He's the guy you can hang with. He's super cool, but not in that cocky kind of off-putting way. He's just this all-around likable, great guy. And Nightwing's that character that you aspire to be just because he's got swagger. and it's when he's written well, his humanity is something that isn't a crutch or a weakness. It makes him relatable. And Nightwing is one of those characters that I do feel like when I read his book, I'm really hanging out with him. And he's really Dick Grayson is really a great human being. And we see him in and out of the costume as the same guy. It's very interesting with him. He doesn't have an off switch. And, a lot of our heroes, when we talk about them, they have an alter ego. Dick Grayson doesn't. He's Dick Grayson, whether he's wearing a mask or he's not. And it's something that I think is, there's other characters that are like that, but it's a very unique quality in that it works so well with him, because I think we really know the character so much in and out of the costume, in his internal dialogue. And he doesn't have a Batman voice. And I like that yin and yang. It's a book that's set in the Batman universe, but it couldn't be more unique and different. And a true adventure story. This one, the Judge, this is a villain I want to see again. And I felt like every time you turned around, because the Judge was using these coins and positioning himself in a way where he was forcing people to do his bidding. And in many ways, they were carrying out all of his actions, not only against Nightwing, but against the city. And he was... The Judge really felt like he was setting Bloodhaven on the correct path and taking care of all the sinners of Bloodhaven. And because even the eyes sewn shut, being like this way of I didn't truly see until I couldn't see kind of thing, was an interesting motif with him. He's just... he has every great quality of a Batman villain. In the sense that, there's the name, the Judge, there's the history piece to him, and he looks the part. And when he comes on the scene, it shakes up the entire world. One person shaking up the entire world of the main character that we're reading. I just really found like this story developed a villain that I want to see become one of Nightwing's regular rogues, and perhaps see him go up against heroes from other cities. Like, I'd love to see him versus Green Arrow.
Oh, God, him Green Arrow would be an awesome battle. And it's funny, as you're talking, I'm just nodding my head in agreement on this guy, because this is one of those stories where I played catch-up on Nightwing, and so I was able to read a bunch of from when he arrived in Bloodhaven through all the different, him dealing with, a couple of the villain, the air quotes around the villains who had gone good, who were trying to reform, and seeing him interact with them. And there was some great stories that came before this, and all these things were building to this Judge. And this had this moment, kind of had this, this whole Judge story had this great feel as if you're building, because you're seeing, Dick Grayson return, arrive in Bloodhaven, and you see him start to build and start to, develop his own footing and become his own hero and try to be the man, not just the costume, and there was all these different, and then the Judge hits. And this is just a fabulous, fabulous villain, because you sit there and there's parts in time where you're thinking he's going to win. The bad guy's going to win on this. And I was honestly thinking a couple of times he would win by disappearing it back into the water. Because even throughout this story, throughout this issue, he has the moment where he offers Dick Grayson hey, just let me return to the ocean. I will go away. I give you my word. And it's one of those things. He's one of those villains that I honestly believe he would have gone back in the water and he would have disappeared for years, just because that's the way the Judge operates. He doesn't lie. He doesn't, it's a weird thing where he's an honest, again, it's a weird way to say honest villain in that he tells you exactly what's going on. Guppy, he said, they're going to respect you. You have to kill your father and they will respect you. And sure enough, Guppy's in prison, and he's respected because he killed the infamous King Sturgeon. And every single person he's ever cut a deal with, he told them 100% the truth. And I love the fact that the Judge made Grayson that offer. And of course, you got to love the fact that Grayson didn't take it. And he's like, no, I'm not going to let you get away again. Nobody else dies. And I love how throughout this whole series, he keeps saying nobody else dies. No, and he was keeping a running total of all the people, including his past occurrence and his present occurrence, that have died because of the Judge. And he's like, no more. And he kept fighting for no more. And it was just a great story where you're cheering for the hero, you're rooting for him, and I was just like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah, and that, I think that was a piece that was consistent throughout the whole story. I'm looking at the page in the casino right now with that countdown. And, you're talking about awesome moments. I loved that it was these teddy bears the Judge was carrying around. A lesser hero would have survived, meaning, escaped and mourned the person that died. In this case, I love that Dick Grayson, it does what the best heroes do. They make those last seconds count. He didn't just save himself. He's like, I'm going to defy the Judge. This guy's going with me. We're both going to survive. And I loved that sequence in particular because of the dialogue. Because you see the visual of him, hanging onto that crane with the bike underneath him and, knowing that, I love this dialogue. My arms screaming, my thighs burning. Hold on, use the momentum and swing like a trapeze. And you just know, this is taking every ounce of everything that this guy's got to make this work. And the intensity of that moment is something I really love. And I love that about comics, when you just get that sense of... the strain on him. And I think the visual of that, you see it on his face, which was something, it's a smaller picture of him, but the tiny details are something I really appreciate when an artist is able to capture that. You see the strain on his face besides just the visual of him holding it, and I really liked that.
Well, and I tell you, that's a cool page with art style, because this is, again, throughout this has been a great story that I absolutely loved, but also some great, beautiful artwork. When he's riding his motorcycle out of the building, he's got the fires behind him. It was a really cool, just a pop of color with the Nightwing, motorcycle, Nightwing coming through, and again, intensity on the facing throughout all these, throughout this whole series, we've been, gotten some really cool artwork, and we've gotten some really neat, the intensity on the faces, especially a lot of times that Judge, man. I loved how they drew the Judge throughout this, especially a couple issues back when he first reveals and he takes off his glasses and you see the eyes sewn shut, and just the look on the Judge face, the look on Grayson's face as he's seeing this going, what the heck? Kind of that, it was a really cool moment.
Yeah, and this story's been filled with a lot of those, where it's just all of a sudden what's going to happen next? And the Judge did what? And oh my God, look at his face. And those type of things really captivate me when you've got a compelling villain. That it's his dialogue, the way he carries himself with a confidence. There's an evil piece to him, but yet you understand his motivations. And that's always something I'm a big fan of when we understand the villain, because I think it's really important that you develop these characters. Nightwing's supporting cast is a big piece of this for me, too, because we're starting to develop some back history of a supporting cast of people that he knew from his time as Robin to people he's known from his time in Bloodhaven. That Detective Svoboda now. I'm looking at Svoboda or whatever, however you pronounce her name. I love the bit that the people closest to Nightwing in this story were people he couldn't trust. And we've seen stories like this happen before in Batman. And for some reason, it means even more when it's Dick Grayson, because his relationship bonds that he builds with people come from such a noble standpoint, because he's just a good guy. And not that Batman isn't, but you know what I mean. Bruce Wayne can be off-putting at times. It's kind of the nature of being Bruce Wayne and the alter ego and, you know, the billionaire playboy. Dick Grayson doesn't have that. So, you know, he's just this really nice guy that develops loyalty, whether he's Nightwing or he's out of the costume. And I really liked that piece as we saw Detective Svoboda kind of helping him out finally. And, you know, Dick Grayson not being surprised by that, you know, knowing that she's trying to overcome, which that was part of what the judge was trying to do here too, trying to make Nightwing see the hopeless nature of everything, you know, that his way was right. And I love that in the end, Nightwing was right about his feelings about those close to him. Bloodhaven's got its own seedy charm. It's a city that, very much like Gotham, has a life of its own. And I'm glad that he went back here in the comics, because I've loved the stories that we've been having with him from, you know, Nightwing before Grayson, and then Nightwing after Grayson. But when he hit Bloodhaven, it was like a homecoming for him. And I think it was at a time where I was ready to see him come back to this place and for it really to be something that we see. Well, but what's Bloodhaven like now? What are the rogues that are there like now? How does that work in this new universe? And I really, really enjoy that piece.
Yeah, and yeah, one of the things about this story that, and this is something that's been going on throughout the Nightwing, I love how we get these endings, but then it's not the end of it all. You know there's going to be more. Like we said with the judge, you know, he's trapped in some specialized prison somewhere, you know, a water tank kind of thing where they're keeping him trapped, but you know he's going to get out. You know, you've got his friends, what's her name, who's the going to be the new casino gambling commissioner. You know, she's not completely clean. You know, it wasn't, you know, Grayson's justifying saying, oh, it was the judge who corrupted her. No, she was actually corrupt in this. She's actually, and you're seeing that.
Lucy,
you know,
it's Lucy.
Lucy, thank you. You see that in, you know, her final scenes where they're saying, hey, you know, where they're offering her the commission job and they're offering that, and you can tell, okay, she's not completely clean. There's going to be more corruption going through. And I even love the fact that with him and the Guppy, you know, bit, and this is the kind of stuff that Batman could never do, that, you know, Damian could never do. This is something that Nightwing can do and not lose any heat or reputation. He can visit this pathetic guy who, in a way, for the first time in his life, is getting what he always wanted, but at what price? And he's able to actually sit down, have a conversation with him. And I love the dialogue between them where Guppy's the one who calls him out and saying, hey, you've forgiven everybody but yourself, man. Come on. You know, your friends, you know, you got to forgive yourself. You got to, you know, look beyond, you know, the death. Look beyond that. Look at the good you did. And I love the fact that, you know, it's this pathetic villain, air quote around villain, that's, you know, having these conversations. It's as you said, he is the guy that you can have these open dialogues with. You can have these conversations. He's the approachable hero. And he's still just that super awesome kind of does stuff that you and I could never possibly do. But when you sit there and you see and you read him doing it, you're like, I believe it. It's believable. You know, granted, what he did, just the couple sequences here, no human could do that. But for some reason, I 100% believe that if Dick Grayson was a real person, he'd be able to pull this stuff off just because of all the stuff we've seen him do, just because we've seen the kind of level of athlete and the level of, you know, just sheer will that he has. You know, it's one of those things where you don't need meta powers if you have that pure drive and willpower that Dick Grayson has. And I absolutely love seeing this, you know, in him. It's part of that where, you know, I always say, you know, Damian or Tim Drake are the heir apparent for me for the cowl. But anytime Grayson had to put the cowl on, I always believed 100%. I was like, yeah, he makes a great Batman. He makes a great Batman when he personalized it and made it his own. When he became Batman, it's that soul. It's that, he's got those qualities that we love about Batman, but he has his own version on it. It's a really cool thing to see when you get the writer who understands him, who's got him, in the right city. Because I'm happy he's in Bloodhaven. This has just been an absolute joy for me.
Yeah, the real thing I like about Dick Grayson is that I don't know what it is about the character. When he gets in danger, you believe he's in danger. And even though, it's Dick Grayson, so I don't believe this character is, are they going to kill off Dick Grayson? There was a rumor, for a while there that Dan DiDio really wanted him dead. But I mean, aside from that, taking that out of the equation, he's a character that even if they did kill him off, it wouldn't last long because the fans would go crazy. And, there would be the return of Nightwing or whatever down the road. But yet, in this story, there were many cliffhangers where I felt the sense of danger, that amazes me. When writers are able to so suspend your because it's like another layer of suspending your disbelief when you're like, okay, they're not going to do it to this character. But yet you believe it in those moments. You believe that danger. And I think it's something that great storytellers are able to do and make you feel. And I really liked that piece of this. Another thing, I was looking at characters like Guppy. This is a character who was another endearing character up until he killed his father. Now he's dangerous. And it's funny how even as you're hearing him talk to Nightwing, you see that endearing quality that was there, but there's a dangerous edge to him now. And it's a creepy edge. Because once you've crossed that line, that illness, and that's really what it was in that moment, and that doesn't go away. And I really liked that feel. Like there was a change in the character that's drastically different than the character we were reading earlier on in this book. And I think it's hard to pull that off as well as they did. And man, is it creepy. Because Guppy's creepy now.
Definitely a creep factor to him. And it's, I agree with you. And he's another villain that could come back. Either escape or parole or whatnot. I don't know how they'll pull him off, but he's a character they could pull out of this prison cell and get him, back on the streets. And it'd be interesting to see after he does time how much of it he would be Guppy as opposed to the new King Sturgeon. Whether he would take over his father's mantle and continue on that way, and he'd stop being Guppy, the cute little cutie, that he is. He'd be the vicious killer, and that's something that, again, there's so much they can do with this series, just because of this. They're building such a strong supporting cast for Nightwing that they can pull from at any given time, because he still has a lot of friends, a lot of villains left over in Bloodhaven that at any point in time they can access him. So this has been, as I said, I keep saying a wonderful ride, and it has been, and I'm so thrilled and excited. It's, I got caught up on Nightwing, and now I'm staying caught up on him. There's going to be no more lag, just because I want to see, now that the Judge story is done, now I want to see what's next. What's next? What do they got next for this guy? Because, he's been through a lot.
Yeah, and that's something that I really enjoyed from this. I think it added more at the end of the storyline as there's that epilogue where, what if I did forgive myself and I never put on the suit again? The monk at the monastery, he said he wanted to talk to God, murdered his brothers to do it. I wondered what he'd say. I wonder what he wanted to say. I hope he says, we're trying the best we can. Even though we may fall, we get back up again. And you get that shot of the tree growing there. And I just love that. I love, the Justice Tree might survive, but even so, we're going to plant these seedlings so that it lives on. And I really loved that hopeful ending. That's what I love about Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson has these dark stories where things look bleak for him, but there's always hope at the end. Like, he really is one of the brighter villains in DC Comics, And it's proof that you can have a character who's positive without it taking away from the edge of a book. Because this is an edgy book. And this was a very edgy story. But yet you didn't sacrifice anything by having this character. There's not like some dirty part of Dick Grayson in this that was needed. Some dark, evil, he didn't have to, snap in order for this story to have that. He just had to persevere and keep on trying. And I love that about this character. I think it makes him one of the more unique characters in that he works better when you just make him this really great guy. And you feel better at the end of his storylines by how they wrap up because of it. And I think you get different storytelling. I don't know. It's something about this book that I think is unique and something that I really appreciate.
With like other heroes, they would have shown the hero being tempted by a judge offer. There would be that temptation. But with Grayson, there was no temptation. There was no time when the judge could have bought, or could have made a deal with him, because he was so focused on my failures in the past. I have to make amends and I have to keep going forward. And he's one of those characters that has those kind of qualities. You mentioned earlier Ollie and the judge. That would be, I think, the big debate within Ollie, whether he would be tempted by the judge, depending on what the judge is offering him, would Oliver Queen, be tempted by that? Or there's a lot of different heroes who would have that temptation and who could be potentially, in the end, I'd assume they'll all make the right choice, but they could have those story elements where they're mulling over the offer and looking at what the options were. With Grayson, he's bam. He is that, that true blue hero. And that's something that is that quality as well that I love when they show and they, you really can bring that out in him.
I want to do a couple speeding bullets topics if I could really quick, just because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention them. Have you been reading any of these new books that have spun out of metal?
Yeah.
Did you read The Silencer?
Yes. Oh, God, yeah.
What a great book that is. So, it's this, she becomes like an ordinary, I don't want to say housewife. She's a wife, there's a kid, there's, a husband. She was a hit woman who got away from it all. And not only just any hit woman, she was trained with Talia al Ghul and she had escaped the life and she was known as the Silencer. And just managed to get away from the underlife and actually live a normal life. But what happens when her old life catches up with her? And she's got to try to find the balance of protecting her family while keeping, at least temporarily, keeping her husband from finding out the secret. And it's looking like it's going to eventually get to the point where he's going to know what's going on with her. I think she's going to reveal it. But, you're juggling that world. And I loved Talia coming, Talia does make an appearance in the book, and I don't want to reveal too much other than the fact that it's very action-laden. It's John Romita Jr. art with Dan Abnett doing the writing, who we were praising for the work on Aquaman. And it's really a great book, and it's one that I'm hoping doesn't get lost, because I think it's a new character. I don't remember ever seeing her before. But it's a great, I think the artwork is a perfect match for it. It's an interesting time to be releasing brand new characters. And I do hope some of these stick, but this is one in particular that I hope, because 2 issues in, I'm really digging the story. Lots of action. I love the way that she reads the villains. I love the edge that she has. What the silencing is that it turns off all sound around. So she's able to, commit, for lack of a better term, acts of assassination or murder without anyone hearing anything, because she's able to put a bubble of silence, a cone of silence, if you will, around everybody. And I really liked that kind of trick, especially I think it's good that we get to know her right away from the beginning as somebody who's had a normal life, because I think she's very relatable because of it.
It's it's meta level power. It's the meta powers to do the stealthing, but then just her personal skill. Mm-hmm. She's got John Wick level of killing. and Kill Bill level of the Bride, right there. Just imagine that level of skills, of an assassin, but the ability to invoke that silence bubble. And I think that is something that's really neat because in a way she's able to use that as well to her advantage, because you think just everyday normal people, if you're immersed in complete silence, that would throw you off. And it does throw these bad guys off their game. And for her, that's comfort. That's natural for her. She's able to operate just as freely in that because that's her realm. That's her area. And I like that, we see her kicking on the silence and we see her just upping the violent game. And again, beautiful, artwork that associated with the chaos and the death and destruction, just the ballet of destruction that we get from her is just absolutely wonderful. I'm really digging the Silencer right now.
Did you read Sideways?
Yes.
That was another good book. And it's got kind of a Spider-Man vibe to it. And I just mean in the sense everything that I really like about Spider-Man winds up being in this book. But I love this character and his powers to kind of teleport, if you will, from place to place. What I like about him is I totally agree with everything you said about the Silencer and her skills and just how much mad skill she's got. I love that this is a teenage kid who this is new to. There's something endearing about seeing him escape, be driven, and the suit that he's wearing that allows him to do this kind of jaunting from place to place is not something he is 100% comfortable with using yet. And I really like that piece to him. I find I'm so glad with I'm a Spider-Man reader and I love Spider-Man. So this is, I think one of the things that was nice about when they introduced Miles Morales into it is you brought back in Spider-Man this sense of the young teenager and, kind of growing up with him and seeing him grow with experience. This has got that flavor to it. It's what I like about Blue Beetle too. Yeah. I think, these characters have that type of piece. And I mentioned earlier Nightwing when I was talking about that sense of danger. This has it too, because he has this one point where it's almost claustrophobic how he gets caught into, which seems to be a common theme I'm having talking in this episode. But he's got, he goes sideways and he's having trouble getting out of the portal that he's stuck in, or the world, whatever that alternate world is that he goes into to get from place to place. And it's because of how much he's injured. And that would be my fear. I love seeing superpowers. Would I love to have a power where I could teleport from place to place? Oh, yeah. But I was a big Nightcrawler fan growing up, and I always wondered, what if he poured it into a wall? Those are things that, Kitty Pryde, with her phasing. I always loved that character, because she would be able to pass through solid objects. But what if her powers give out when she's midway through a wall? I seem to be very afraid of walls. This story Sideways had, similar sort of issues going on with it. And I like that. There's this sense of, I think if I had the powers, I'd be using them too. But there's a danger to using those powers, which I think is really interesting.
I'm glad you mentioned Spider-Man because I'm completely agreeing with you on that. That I felt that it definitely has a Spidey feel to him. Again, not rip off or anything like that. He's completely different powers, but he still had that same kind of feel. Blue Beetle, same thing with you. I like those comparisons. Matter of fact, I would like to see this kid on Titans, on the Teen Titans.
Yes.
100% think he would go great with that team. He would be wonderful with them. And it reminded me of the movie Jumpers. Was it Jumpers or? Yeah, I think it's Jumpers, where they teleport but it's you had to picture the image in your head. So it was Hayden Christian who was the Anakin Skywalker. He was the main character, and he would teleport, and there was people who are against them and
Jumper, not Jumpers.
Oh, Jumper.
It was from 2008.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew that when you were saying it, I'm like, it sounds right, but why is there something? It was only the S at the end, so I mean, wasn't being critical. I just wanted to look it up while you were mentioning it, because this is more me agreeing with you, because I'm like, oh, I know what he's talking about. Yes, he's right. So I mean, that really is more the theme here, but yeah, the movie is Jumper.
Yeah, so it's like it was drawing immediate comparisons with all those things. So for me, this was one that I was I want to say I was surprised how much I'm enjoying it. Like Silencer, just reading the blurb on it, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to dig this, just because I like a good shoot 'em. I like a good violence. I like, some of that. So Sideways, I'm really kind of surprising myself at how much I was enjoying this. Now I really dig Blue Beetle, so it shouldn't be too big of a surprise to me. But it was something, I don't know what it was, just the way it was presented before to me. So this is one that, this is another one I would recommend to people, because it surprised me that I'm enjoying it as much as I'm enjoying it.
Dan DiDio and Justin Jordan do the dialogue. Kenneth Rocafort does the art. And I'm a big fan. Kenneth Rocafort had that great run on Superman. And I'm really glad to see him on another monthly book. I hope this one has some legs to it, because I'm really enjoying this ride. And it's a surprise. It's a nice surprising one, too, because I was with you. This was one that was kind of flying under my radar, because there's a lot of these books that are being released as a part of this metal. And aside from Terrifics, which I do want to talk about briefly next, I really have... they were new characters to me, for the most part. Because Damage, even though Damage existed before, Damage was a character. But this is a new version of Damage. So there's not a link to the old Damage. So it's rebooting that concept. And actually, let's just jump to it. I want to talk a little bit about the Terrifics, because this was one I knew Jeff Lemire was writing it, and I'm like, okay, you've got me at that piece. The artwork is it's Ivan Reis. I know I butcher. I don't think it's Rice. I've called him in on the show. It's Reis, and such a great artist. And I just that's why I really want to make sure I'm getting that right. It's a great looking book. I'm glad we're getting to see Plastic Man and Metamorpho and Mr. Terrific, and we're getting to see one of the Legionnaires as a part of this. And there's something that's really great about bringing in Simon Stagg and all of the elements that we know about Metamorpho. This book has the biggest DC feel of all of these, and that's not a criticism of the other books. I mean, DC lore feel to it, because I really like this version of Mr. Terrific. It's the one that I remember from JSA, and I'm not saying it has to be a part of JSA. It's just there's an understanding of who Michael Holt is in this book, and it works really, really well. And I love seeing him with these characters who I've wanted to see some screen time with. Plastic Man in particular, I was particularly excited to see him not be an egg and be a participant in this storyline. And that's a part that I'm really enjoying about this one. That this one I kind of knew just because of the creator, the writer, I should say, and art. I was going to love it, and it's really delivering. Plastic Man and Metamorpho, having them on a team, because on paper, when you look at them, you're like, well, isn't that a very similar power set? It's kind of like having, and they've done this before, Plastic Man and Elongated Man on a team. But what's fun about doing that sometimes and having characters that are similar is that's, I think, one of the biggest ways to slam you in the face with what's different. And this really does it very, very well, and embraces the history of these characters, and really at the core gets to who they are. I loved Plastic Man in this. Really just dug him.
Yeah, little funny moments, where he's talking. Initially, he's complaining about being the egg. Then later, when they're getting swarmed, I take it all back. I want to be an egg again, right now. And just little funny bits. Again, story-wise, wonderful artwork, though. Oh my God, I absolutely love this artwork. Especially when we first that scene where we first see Phantom Girl. I got to tell you, that for me was just a nice, breathtaking. Oh, that looks cool. And then just a look on her face and the kind of the wonder, are you guys real on her face? And then the intensity on Holt's right after. And, really cool contrast on just the face and just everything that we're getting, just the emotional spectrum throughout this. This was a solid, first issue, has me wanting more.
One of my favorite pages was, I don't think this is a planetoid. And you see Plastic Man stretch out and go, yep, this is not good. And you see this giant that they're on. It was such a Star Wars, I'm a big fan of Empire Strikes Back, when they were inside the creature and they shot at the floor, which was really the tongue. And it was, this had that kind of vibe to it, but being very unique on seeing this giant creature walking. And I really loved how the whole thing played out. This is a series, it delivered everything that I hoped it was going to, which you get afraid of that sometimes when you walk into something where you've got a lot of hype to it in your own, from yourself, that maybe it's not going to live up to what you thought it was going to. And this one certainly did.
Now, let me ask you, with the big giant alien looking thing that they're in.
Okay.
Obviously, it's an undead by the decay, but it kind of, to me, looks like maybe Monitor, Anti-Monitor kind of ancestor. If not them, but kind of has that look to them.
I could see that.
Just me.
I don't think that they're going there with it because I think we would know that already. But I see how you're getting that. That wasn't what I was thinking. And it's not me. This isn't me disputing you. It's more of a... I really don't think they're going there, what the issue is. But are you thinking that's where they're going with this?
That's what I'm thinking. Well, that was when I read, because same with you, I love that page. That was the first thought that popped in my head, that this isn't the Anti-Monitor, the Monitor. It's maybe an ancestor or something like that, because they're traveling through multiverses, dark matter verse. This is a multi-dimensional traveling book is what I'm getting the vibe from, that they're going to be jumping around. They're not coming back to Earth anytime soon.
That I can buy into. Yeah, I don't know. I guess this series I'm really just enjoying the ride, so I don't have an answer for that. I could see that. It wasn't what I was thinking, but, sometimes you say that and it's like, you're trying to dispute something. I'm not in that place with this. I'm just kind of enjoying the ride. I wasn't thinking that, but I can see how you're arriving at that conclusion. And I really don't disagree with it. I could see that being very much a possibility on what ends up happening. So I don't know. I don't know on that.
Yeah,
it's an interesting series. Was this one you were were you really anticipating this one, or where were you at when this one?
I don't know. I wasn't really I wasn't like excited. Oh my God, I can't wait for this to come out. Yeah, I always liked Mr. Terrific, and I got a weird just opinion of Plastic Man, that there are times when I absolutely think, oh, that's a funny character, and times like I really don't want this. So this was a book that I was like, I want to read it just because I gotta read issue 1 just to see what's going on, but I wasn't excited and chomping at the bit with it. This is one, though, again, another one of these that I'm gonna keep. I'm probably gonna keep following it and keep seeing where it goes.
I can see that. Can we talk a little bit about Milk Wars?
Sure. Because
we had that crossover. Now, what is your we read some of the Young Animals issues when that line kicked off, and I found I loved all of them. I loved the concept. They were ones that wound up getting stockpiled for me because of time. I would gradually catch up on some of them, but it was a line I was always behind on. When Milk Wars came up, I'm like, I'm just going to jump ahead to Milk Wars. I'm really excited for this. I'm enjoying the line a great deal, and I know I'm going to read my backlog of it. When I say backlog, it's sometimes when you say that, it's a negative piece. It's more of I'm reading a lot of comics and just I wasn't getting to it. It's not a statement on quality. And I do want to clarify that piece. on this. But I was excited for Milk Wars. I'm like, okay, this is kind of a jumping on point for me again. Let me jump right into this crossover because it'll be fun to see these characters with the DC Universe characters, having no idea what this story was going to be or what retcon was or, who the Milkman was going to be. I was thinking that was Superman, but then you find out later that's not the case. And it was just a really great crossover storyline. That was my impression, though. I liked it, and I walked in, and there were characters. I knew all the characters because I'd read enough of Young Animals to know all the characters, but I was certainly not caught up when I read this, and I didn't feel lost at all. Well, I didn't feel any more lost than you should feel in this kooky story. And that's not a criticism. I liked the wacky of this mixed with the seriousness of bringing in a lot of your DC favorites, because it kicked off with a Justice League special. It ended with a Justice League special, then had some spotlight issues along the way of these characters teaming up with various members of the DC Universe. So what were your thoughts? Did you like this? Because as I was reading it, I'm like, I really want to talk to Jim about this because I want to get his impression, because I'm guessing you weren't caught up on Young Animals when you started this either.
Oh God, no! I'd read issue 1 of all those different things, and I never picked them up again. And it wasn't even a Young Animals line. I didn't have time. And I had it's you talk about the stockpiling, and I was doing that massively with the Young Animals stuff, and wasn't reading any of it to the point where I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna stop buying it because I'm stockpiling and I'm not reading and I'm not even, it doesn't look like I'm getting to it anytime soon. So I'm like, I'm just going to save the money on this one and not do anything. And so when Milk Wars came around, I knew absolutely nothing about the crossover coming. It wasn't until you said, hey, let's talk Milk Wars. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking, what's Milk Wars? I had to look it up, like, oh, okay. And so I, picked up, the issue, and I picked up issue 1 thinking, okay, I'll pick this up. Sean and I will talk about it. And then we kind of got delayed and we weren't able to talk about it. So then Mother Panic Batman came on. Well, I'll pick that one up. We weren't able to talk about it. The Shade Wonder Woman, I picked that up. Now, throughout each of these reads, I enjoyed the story. I wasn't like going, oh, I can't wait to finish this thing and see where this goes. I wasn't like, oh my God, this is wonderful. But every time I read the issue, I was like, oh, that's a cool story. Oh, that's a cool story. That's a cool story. By the time I got through all 5 issues, I'm like, okay, this was a pretty solid, story, and there were times where I was a little confused as to who people were in the Doom Patrol. Because when I first read the issue I read of Doom Patrol, I didn't know who any of those were. I had a vague understanding of who Shade was, and I kind of knew who Mother Panic and that whole thing. And so dealing with those characters, Cave Carson, I was like, okay, I kind of know who these people are. And then Cave's got a little bit of a, psychedelic trip to it. So I was like, all right, this is kind of, I'm kind of grooving here, and it's just one of those stories. I'm glad I read it, and I'm not going back and rereading the other Young Animal stuff. And I'm not going back and saying, oh, let me continue going forward. Mother Panic, I think, is interesting that she's now in our Gotham. So that could be kind of an interesting thing.
No, she's in the future. She's in the future.
She's in the future? I thought she was...
She was in our Gotham before.
Oh, okay.
At the end of this, she was bumped into the future.
Okay, I thought she got bumped into she was in a different dimension Gotham. That's how I read it.
No. She was in... Because I read Mother Panic. She was in our Gotham. So... And in her crossover story, she was in our Gotham. But at the end of the Justice League special, the Justice League Doom Patrol special, she's actually bumped into the future.
Okay.
So it's going to be interesting to see what ends up happening, because the universe changes for all of them by the end of this in how everything's righted. I'm trying to think, did they say it in this? Where did I see that? Yeah, so... dumped off in Gotham City, but not the one I know. The city has a presence, a shadow. I don't feel it anymore. Gotham has a weight, crushing, and just got heavier. I'm reading maybe I read it for the preview of the new book, because all of these books are starting again.
Yeah.
So the Shade, the Changing Woman is the next book. Kate Carson started over again. Eternity Girl, which that's probably the one I'm most excited about because that's a wacky sort of thing because she's talking to us. She's going all Deadpool, having and it's
that was her ending when she slipped out of the universe and when she's like, "Oops, I almost missed my," when they're at the ending there when they're in Happy Harbor, Rhode Island, and she actually crawls into the panel, and then as she enters, she sheds the kind of the white coat or the white exterior, and she actually is a living person now. And I thought that was kind of a neat thing. Again, I didn't completely know who she was going through this, but I did like that that breaking of the fourth wall and just her climbing into the panel and her acknowledging she knows what's going on a little bit more than everybody else, but she's still a little confused.
I'm making a concerted effort to read these moving forward, and the reason why, and I'm not saying you're wrong for not. It's my reasoning for it is I really enjoy the different nature of these stories. I think they're very well written. There's something different. You alluded to it in kind of your comments how it was an enjoyable story. It's fun. It's wacky. It's out there, and I'm into that. This is like my wheelhouse. I'm finding one of the problems I'm having is the sheer number of books that are out there now because we got the Metal line that was just released, with these new titles. And then we've got this line. And Vertigo's getting ready to start having a research. I've actually been enjoying some of the Vertigo books that are coming out right now, but I know there's another resurgence coming of Vertigo. So I'm really enjoying this, and I want this line to succeed because I'm really interested. The artwork having Dale Eaglesham on the crossover, I was a big fan of that artwork from Justice Society of America, so I was glad to see his artwork featured in this particular book. I didn't expect Robot Man to be a man. We were done with all this too, so it was interesting to see how that piece goes because Doom Patrol doesn't have a series spinning out of this. So I don't know I don't know if there's one on the slate that's going to be coming, but I know it's not one of the ones at least I saw solicited. So I don't know what's going to happen with those characters, but I like that they took a lot of the stuff they're doing are things that Grant Morrison played off of in Vertigo years ago, and they're kind of bringing it to today, which is kind of strange to say because that Grant Morrison stuff was so edgy and ahead of its time at the time. But I love how Grant Morrison did a great job of throwing ideas out there with the intention of, hey, it'd be great if somebody picks these up and goes with them. And it's something I've always liked about his mindset with these characters. And I'm glad to see like Flex Mentalo and, the Doom Patrol and kind of his stuff appearing in this. It works surprisingly well. Here's a piece I've got with you. Did you feel like as you were reading these crossover stories that these were your characters from the DC Universe, the ones that you love from the DC Universe, or did you feel like they didn't feel like the same characters because they were in this world?
Which you mean like Batman, Wonder Woman, those characters?
You got it. Yeah.
Actually, that's something that again I really liked, about this. Like with that with Batman and in Mother Panic, I thought that was a really cool story. In that, I liked, you see the corruption of Bruce. You see, but it still felt like Bruce Wayne. It still felt like Batman. Definitely Wonder Woman was another one that, when she shed the super housewife, or I can't remember what she was actually called. When she shed that, she was like, okay, I'm Wonder Woman now. It's time to throw down. But she still had that approachability that makes Wonder Woman cool. She still had that, that awe to her that, you could see why people would trust and follow her after she got, shed the milk, and she was actually back to herself again.
Yeah, we haven't really alluded to that much in this. The whole retcon thing, they were all retconned because they were drinking milk. So the milk was tainted, and it was retconning their origins. They actually had different origin stories and different status quos and continuities because of the fact that they were drinking milk. So everyone around them was joining into their new continuity because they were having themselves a transition and shift to this retcon continuity. It all came from bad milk.
Yeah.
And it worked. It sounds wacky, but it works surprisingly well. I thought this was really. I'm glad you enjoyed the read. And I'm like, I don't think Jim's reading these right now because we haven't ever talked about them since, we originally were like kind of teasing it. And when I saw the crossover, I'm like, well, this is fun because even if you're not reading it, you have your favorite characters that are in crossover stories. So I was wondering if you read it, and I was wondering if you enjoyed this as its own piece, and if there was any interest in going forward in reading other issues of any of these series spinning out of this, which you kind of answered, but yeah, it's a very interesting book. I'm glad you read it and enjoyed it because I had fun with this one too. I do get worried with some of these lines that are unique like this. That what happens if they don't find an audience or something like that or enough of an audience, I should say. And I don't check the numbers to see how this is doing, but I hope it's doing an acceptable set of numbers for DC because I want to see more of this. I'm looking at the cover closing credits with Batman created by Bob Kane and with Bill Finger. There is speaking of documentaries, there's a documentary on Netflix right now I think it's called Batman and Me. It's about Bill Finger and tells the story. Not Netflix. I'm sorry. Did I say Netflix? Hulu. It's on Hulu. Remember Mark Tyler Nobleman, who we had on the show years ago for Boys of Steel when we were at New York Comic Con and ran into him? He wrote a book about Bill Finger, and he's featured heavily in this documentary. I know he's got something to do with it, but it's this whole documentary charting what happened with Bill Finger. And the fact that for years, Bob Kane took the sole credit for the creation of Batman, even though he didn't do it alone. Actually, there was quite a bit of change that can be directly attributed to Bill Finger, so it was very much a collaborative process. And I'm glad that we're finally seeing Bill Finger's name attached to this, but the documentary goes into how that happened, like why we're seeing Bill Finger's name now. After all this time, because Bill Finger died in the early 70s. So it's an interesting sort of documentary. I know I'm getting teasery with it, but I kind of want to leave it that way and tell people you should watch it because it's really, really good. And it was something I just came across by accident on Hulu. And I'm not sure if it's available for download or anything, but it's a really good documentary for anybody that has Hulu. So kind of good stuff. So, Jim, is there anything else you want to chat about?
Well, I tell you, a title, that I'm absolutely loving, and I've said this a couple times, but dealing with the Teen Titans and with the Super Sons, and I'm mentioning the two of those together just because they're doing a great job with the connectability between them. Damian in one is Damian in the other. And even there's crossover stuff where they're having sometimes John on the Teen Titans. They ran through this whole gambit of, with the Titans of Tomorrow crossover. Those two books are absolutely wonderful. And that's something like, I love Damian, the little monster that he is, but I love the fact that we're seeing the growth of him. We're seeing the evolution. We're seeing him actually have a friend. Jonathan Kent, is now his friend. And even though he still doesn't completely admit it because he's Damian, but he's admitting it in his own ways. And I love seeing just, Damian step up for his friend, physically, emotionally, and just, general support structure. And of course, Kent, he's a Kent. He's going to, he's got that, Damian's his friend. He's got his back. Even if it's going to get him maybe in trouble with mom and dad, he's still going to be there for his friend. And I love seeing this friendship that grew out of the fact that their dads are best friends and it's kind of grown into something more where these two are now partners. And, Teen Titans is doing some great classic Teen Titans stories of the young heroes finding their place in the world. You've got the super sons of the children of the two of the Trinity, finding who they are and what it means for them to be heroes. And then you got just Damian being Damian. It's there are these moments where you're like, okay, especially recently we've had some Talia al Ghul in there. We've had his mother in there, so it's Damian dealing with his mother, and John just seeing what it is that it's kind of like, oh, that explains a lot now that I've met your mom. Kind of moments that it just. They're not afraid to have some fun moments. They have these true dun-da-da hero moments, and those are two titles that I'm absolutely just saying, man, right here, this is what I want from these two characters. Thank you.
I want to shout out a book that's a Marvel read, actually, really quick, because it just came out this week, and I'm not going to go super spoilery with it, but it's something that may not be on people's radars, if you're mainly a DC fan, but I'm a huge Hulk fan, and I'm a huge Wolverine fan. Well, what if you merged them? That's the premise of Weapon H.
Oh, God.
It's Hulk with adamantium claws and an adamantium skeleton.
Oh, God.
And it's not like Bruce Banner. It is, it's very much like Weapon X. Weapon H is, it's an experiment that was put into play. And it's a soldier that was put in place for this segment, and it goes through his whole story, because now that he's become this monster, it takes him out of his life. So you get to see this guy who's had to give up, his life because of being this new creature. I can't wait to see where, I really enjoyed the first issue. The first issue is kind of a dramatic build to, you get very early on the idea of, this creature with the claws and things like that in the issue. But the rest of it is like this suspenseful build to actually seeing the monster. And when you finally see it, it's in action. It's like, you couldn't think the Hulk would get any stronger, or Wolverine for that matter. And then they did this one. It's Greg Pak who's doing the writing on this one. So, it's a top quality creator. The artwork's really gorgeous in it. So it's just something I just wanted to shout out. Just not, we're still mainly a DC show and all that, but I do read Marvel books. I enjoy Marvel books. I read indies and all that. And I just thought it might be nice to, just for once, shout out something that just came out that I was like, oh, this is kind of different. It was under my radar. Just a fun little read, Weapon H. So figured I'd shout it out just because it came out this week. But good stuff.
We are Crystal Men from Mercury. We have no quarrel with you.
I actually do want to correct one thing that I said before, because I was just looking through some previews, and I'm not caught up on Young Animals. Doom Patrol's still an ongoing. That's why it wasn't relaunched. So I do want to shout that out, because I didn't want to misrepresent the book. And I'm glad to hear that, because I'm a big Doom Patrol fan. I just haven't been... I'm behind on Young Animals, like you and I were talking about. So I thought it was odd when I was looking at all the new number ones. I thought they were relaunching the entire line. They're not. So Doom Patrol is still very much in existence and it's just continuing on. It's not being relaunched. I wonder what makes that decision, because they relaunched Kate Carson, for example, and Shade. So I wonder why they didn't relaunch Doom Patrol. That was strange. I'm not arguing with it. I'm glad that there is still Doom Patrol. So we'll just leave it at that. But I wanted to correct myself the second I realized my mistake. I'm like, I don't want to misrepresent this title and be unfair. So Doom Patrol does very much still exist. I would like to remind everyone about our show voicemail line. It's 1-440-388-4434 or Dr. Norge on Skype. We love having you part of the show. ragingbullets@gmail.com is our email address. Feel free to send us in any of your thoughts via email. We'd love to read those on the podcast as well. ragingbullets.com is our show website with news on when episodes will be released. So we do feed that into Twitter, and we send that information also to our Facebook page. We have a wonderful Facebook group community that we are proud to be a part of, and I just want to thank the whole crew over there for always making that such a fun, wonderful site. It's something that we are proud to be associated with on any level, and just wanted to shout that out. We're on Google+. You are on the PlayStation Network as Sensei_Whatnot. I'm under Raging_Bullets. Please feel free to add us and do some gaming with us. And Jim, sponsoring this episode once again is DCB Service and InStockTrades.com. What's going on at DCBService.com?
Well, they always have their bundles, 50% off bundles. Great deal if you're looking to, check out the different packages they offer. But they've got this really cool DC Nation #0. Multiple stories, some preludes to some of the big events coming through DC in 2018, and at 50% off, it's only 12 cents. So, pick up 2, limit of 5. So most you can get is 5 of them, but pick up 2, give 1 to a friend.
Especially at that price. That's crazy. Over at InStockTrades.com, I do want to shout out again the omnibuses that are over there. The Green Lantern Silver Age Omnibus Volume 2. 50% off, only $62.50. Hawk and Dove, the Silver Age Omnibus Trade Paperback, is 50% off, only $12.49. I want to thank DCB Service and InStockTrades.com for continuing to support our show. I want to once again thank Brian Lau for joining us on this episode. It's always great to not only talk about the creation of a comic, but the Kickstarter campaigns. A lot of people out there, I think, are potential indie creators who are looking for hey, what is that like, and what's it? And I love his frank discussion as far as what that looks like for him as a creator. He gives us a great opportunity and great amount of time to talk about not only his work but the how we got there, which is endlessly impressive to me. And we're big fans, so please consider supporting Staunch Ambition. There are links in the show notes to that Kickstarter campaign. So please, let's help Brian get over the hump on this one and really knock it out of the park. We appreciate you for that. Our next episode, Jim and I are going to be talking about comics. I'm actually going on a vacation, and we'll give you more details on the show website as soon as I get back on what that's going to look like. So we will see you then.
Bye.